interests, prejudices, and partial affections. The result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting or knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This meeting of the Honorable Senate of Friday, November 10, 2023 is called to order. Just before we begin the business of the day, Senators Sinclair, Gale, and I spoke with Senator Brown this morning, offered his apologies, says that he continues to make steady progress. So he sounded in good cheer. And I think that Senator Morris, just by way of information, Senator Morris and Senator Golden Campbell are overseas, I believe. Oh. Okay. Thank you very much. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following. Annual report of the Office of Utilities Regulation for the financial year 2022-2023 and its related ministry paper numbered 102 of 2023. Ministry paper number 103 of 2023 entitled The Revised Restorative Justice Policy. Green paper number 4 of 2023 entitled Restorative Justice Policy Promoting Restorative Justice to Resolve Conflicts and Grievances. The Integrity Commission Amendment of 3rd Schedule Regulations 2023 and its resolution under the Integrity Commission Act. The Auditor General's Department Certified Appropriation Accounts for head 15,010 with the Ministry for the Jamaica Information Service for the year 2019-2020. And by way of information, report of the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee of the House of Representatives on its deliberations on the proposal made by the Integrity Commission to increase the annual emoluments threshold and other matters.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to... I'm sorry.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the following motion. Whereas Section 64(1)B of the Integrity Commission Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Commission may make regulations amending the form specified in the 3rd Schedule of the Act. And whereas Section 64(3) of the Act provides that regulations made under Section 64(1) of the Act shall be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas on the 28th day of September 2023, the Commission made the Integrity Commission Amendment of 3rd Schedule Regulations 2023, now therefore be it resolved by this Honorable Senate as follows. 1, this resolution may be cited as the Integrity Commission Amendment of 3rd Schedule Regulations 2023 resolution. 2, the Integrity Commission Amendment of 3rd Schedule Regulations 2023, which were laid on the table of the Senate on the 10th day of November 2023, are affirmed. And Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that sorry.
Thank you, Minister. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today the State of the Nation debate will continue with contributions by Senator Charles Sinclair and Senator Damian Crawford. And we will also take on the agenda in public business the matter of the water resolution, which will be led by Minister Samuda. Minister Samuda has asked that we allow the State of the Nation to go first, although we would normally take Minister's business first. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, it's my pleasure to make my contribution today in the debate on the State of the Nation. It's my distinct honor, Mr. President, to be a member of this august body of persons, the Senate of Jamaica. I give thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, for having the confidence to have appointed me to this position and affording me the opportunity to serve my country and its people at this level. To my colleagues on both sides of the divide, I appreciate the times shared here as we attend to the business of the nation. I thank my esteemed leader of government business, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Mrs. Kamina Johnson-Smith, who gives us every opportunity to participate. She continues to distinguish herself, Mr. President, as leader of government business in this chamber and in her ministry. And when history is written, she will go down as the best Minister of Foreign Affairs. Equally, Mr. President, I thank you for guiding this chamber in the manner that you have. You have at all times exhibited balance and fairness in your rulings and general commentary. I extend appreciation to the parliamentary staff led by Ms. Valerie Curtis. They have all done their duties to the optimum on behalf of the Parliament and its members. A grateful nation applauds all of you. Last but not least...
Thank you, Senator Sinclair.
You're welcome, sir. Last but not least, I give thanks to my family who have afforded me the time and space to continue in my role in serving the public at the local and national level. Mr. President, before I embark on the substantive presentation, I crave your indulgence because I wish to join with all well-minded, law-abiding Jamaicans to extend condolences to the family and friends of young Justin Perry and Natalie Smith, who were brutally slain by persons who can best be described as terrorists. I commend the members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force stationed at the Montego Hills Police Station, that police station being led by Inspector Bruce Walker, who rushed the boys to the hospital in an effort to save their precious lives. Mr. President, I have seen where our police officers go through traumatic situations when they are called on to undertake these tasks of removing dead bodies from the public space. Mr. President, those circumstances are created because of irresponsible and heartless attitude of a few. The action of those responsible for the deaths of those young ones must be condemned with one voice. I trust that our security forces and every right-minded Jamaican will ensure swift justice is delivered, commencing with their capture. They must find no comfort, Mr. President. They must find no comfort in any hole into which they have slithered, and I use that term deliberately. Mr. President, as we undertake the task of looking at penalties for offenses, I am proposing a look at the offense of harboring a fugitive. Once our law enforcement identifies and publishes a suspect as wanted, even, Mr. President, the mere supplier of a glass of water in comfort and protection of those wanted persons to keep him out of the hands of the police must incur severe penalties. This administration, Mr. President, has exhibited the courage, the fortitude to take all steps to cauterize the bloodthirst of those who create mayhem, including the use of the state of public emergency whenever recommended by the leadership of the security forces. And I cry shame on the opposition. With the rise of their new leader of the opposition, whenever the measure is used which has proven to protect the lives of Jamaicans, it is opposed. When severe sentences for heinous and destructive offenses are proposed by the administration, there is opposition. Mr. President, something is wrong with their equation. To me, it is simple. You don't want to do the time, don't do the crime. Too many excuses are made for criminals. Everything and everyone else is to blame for their action. And interestingly, Mr. President, they would not wish for anyone else to do the same act to them as they are doing to the innocent people of Jamaica. Mr. President, in 2022, the Honorable Prime Minister, at a handing over ceremony for one of the many thousands of new housing solutions built by this administration since 2016, said these words, and I found them to be profound. I quote, Mr. President, "Will Jamaica be the same as I came and saw it? I can't let Jamaica be the same as I came and saw it." Mr. President, those words reflect the commitment of a leader with vision and desire to transform this country from being a small island state to one where we here and in the diaspora can be proud. Indeed, Jamaica has the potential to be the envy of this region and the hemisphere. Mr. President, the journey to that goal is underway under this administration and under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister. The seeds of prosperity for the building of a new Jamaica have been planted and are growing. When you look on the many infrastructure projects that are taking place simultaneously, which when complete will boost the fortunes of the residents and the country as a whole, we can feel proud of the direction in which we are heading. The Southern Coastal Highway from St. Andrews through St. Thomas into Portland will improve access to the eastern side of the island, making it ripe for growth and mega investment opportunities. The administration is in the process of creating a new town center for Morant Bay. The developments in St. Thomas placed on the rubbish heap the comments of the leader of the opposition, who only recently had the temerity to tell the people of that parish that the government was not acting in their best interests. History will show that it was the PNP which closed the Goodyear factory, as they did 40,000 businesses under FinSac that ruined the lives and prospects for a better life for many in St. Thomas and across Jamaica. Other major and transformational infrastructure projects include the Maypen to Williamsfield Highway the Montego Bay Perimeter Road project. There are others for which preliminary works have started, including the expansion of the North Coast Highway from Sea Castles in Montego Bay to Ocho-Rios in St. Anne, and from Montego Bay to Negril, which is a critical bypass to bottlenecks along the coastline. Mr. President, when we look at what we have done in respect to legislation, we have passed significant pieces of legislation. The NIDS Act is now in place, the Data Protection Act, the Road Traffic Act, the New Firearms Act. Mr. President, and in respect to the Road Traffic Act, what we have seen since its full implementation is a reduction this year by over 17% of fatal crashes and loss of life and injuries on our highways. Mr. President, when you look at how we have been spoken about internationally, Jamaica's economic recovery post-COVID under this administration is remarkable. This effort has added to Jamaica's prestige and standing regionally and internationally. Comments from some of the noted commentators in the Miami Herald refers to Jamaica under the leadership of Andrew Holness as being a superpower in the Caribbean. World Bank President Mr. Ajay Banga praised Jamaica's economic health. The IMF, Mr. President, says Jamaica has overperformed and has set itself as an example for other small countries to follow. Financial Times rates Jamaica's performance as an economic miracle. And Jamaica's rating by the international rating agencies has improved to levels never attained by any previous administration. Mr. President, whilst other prime ministers led administrations with varying successes in the past, none, Mr. President, before the current prime minister has faced 2 years of the worst pandemic in 100 years, followed by other international events that would have placed external pressures on some of the things that we're experiencing, including the prices. Mr. President, the recovery effort and actions that flow therefrom will mean nothing unless it contributes to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Jamaica and the various communities across the island. It cannot be contested that a JLP administration, whether this or JLP administrations in the past, Mr. President, have done much better than others in improving the quality of life of communities and Jamaicans over the years that it formed government. Mr. President, I will get into some of what I am speaking about when I speak of even administrations of the past, and specifically to deal with some comments made by my colleague Senator Ali. Mr. President, Senator Allen asked, how is tourism changing the communities? She went on to ask, and I quote, if tourism generates billions each year, then we must see the tangible results by the transformation of communities from one generation to the next. She went on to reference some communities, specifically mentioned Flanker, Farm Heights, Gradpin, and Green Island. And as a result of her comments, was captured by a major news network, which had her quoted as saying, government is failing in its duty to ensure that more communities feel the impact of the booming tourist industry, and only deep-pocketed individuals are benefiting from the industry. Mr. President, that sentiment, at least in respect to the JLP administration, because they said government, she never spoke about a JLP, but I suspect that is where she was going. At least in respect of a JLP administration, is far from being true and falls squarely into the category described by my Senate colleague Shireen Golding Camp in her presentation when she spoke, and I quote, also from your presentation, Senator Goldie Campbell, that you say we must not get drawn into propaganda and hype or baseless criticisms and fake news. That is where I put the comment and sentiments expressed. Mr. President, one way in which the billions earned from tourism get into the communities in a transformative way is through the Tourism Enhancement Fund. The fund is created under the Act bearing its name, and sections 3 and 10 expressly state how the fund can be spent. So it's not a matter that you can just say, well, you're going to just take the monies and spend it everywhere and anywhere, because the Act speaks specifically, and I won't go into the details of the particular sections. But the legislation is clear. But I want to give credit, Mr. President, to our Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Edmund Bartlett, and the board of the TEF. Because what the minister did is that he applied a liberal interpretation to the provisions under the Tourism Enhancement Fund Act. Interestingly, in 2009, the PNP opposition opposed the expenditure, Mr. President, of $30 million by the TF for community development in Barretttown in St. James. As we all know, Barretttown is immediately adjacent to the hotel strip. It houses a craft village and is the home of many workers in the tourism industry. At that time, a project earmarked to cost $30 million, as I said, was being examined by the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, which was chaired by none other than Member of Parliament, former Minister of Tourism, Wickham McLean. The opposition members on that committee included Member of Parliament Ronnie Thwaites and Dr. D.K. Duncan. The project also had in it $12.5 million spent to refurbish a community center and the construction of a pathway into Barretttown, and $21.5 million on road repairs. It is reported that the opposition members were angered, Mr. President, and questioned whether the TF should be used for that purpose. So look at it. 2009, when you're seeking to use the billions that is earned from the TF, there was opposition from the then opposition. Mr. President, I raised the 2009 situation to show how the PNP opposition blows hot and cold as it suits them. Or is it, Mr. President, that the PNP, through Senator Allen, is now of the view that the use by the JLP administration of the TF, past and present, to transform and improve the quality of life of residents within the communities is a better policy? Mr. President, significant sums running into billions have been spent to improve the quality of life and improvement of human resources and infrastructure in many communities while sticking to the general tenets of the TF Act. Let us look at some of them. The TF Summer Internship Project. This expenditure creates opportunities across the 14 parishes of Jamaica for persons to gain valuable work experience while generating income for themselves. In 2023, over 1,100 students at the secondary and tertiary level benefited under the program. And when you compare the 2023 input into that program, Mr. President, and compare it to the 6 years between 2013 to 2019, only 3,900 persons benefited. Over that period, we have an increase in 1 year where 1,100 students were able to benefit. In 2023, the students would have earned a stipend at the lower end, $14,500, $20,500 weekly over a 6-week period. Mr. President, those students are not deep-pocketed individuals. Mr. President, the squatter grading by the TF, several reports would reveal that under JLP administrations between 2007 to to 2011 and 2016 to 2023. And I spoke with the chairman of the HAJ, who told me that over $3 billion have been spent on improving the infrastructure and quality of life for residents in poor and vulnerable communities. Through this program, titles have been made available to residents, thereby unleashing the equity in the property. Communities in St. James, such as Norwood, Providence Heights, Grange Pen, Lilliput, Barrett Town, Barrett Hall, all in St. James, have benefited under this program. Shaw Park Heights in St. Anne has also been a beneficiary. Thousands of households, Mr. President, from this spending do not, by any stretch of the imagination, constitute deep-pocketed individuals. Mr. President, Flanker was specifically mentioned. Flanker was specifically mentioned. And you drive just past the entrance to Flanker, you see the Flanker Economic and Social Zone, where over $20 million was spent in the construction of the food stalls, all-purpose court, which has gone a far way in creating social and economic opportunities for residents, improving the lives and livelihoods of Jamaicans who don't fall in the category of the deep-pocketed. Mr. President, improvement, you use the term deep-pocketed, madam. Mr. President, improvement of entertainment and recreation zones have been done under this administration in Negril, Whitehall, 83 million. In Trenchtown, that is the constituency of the leader of the opposition, where the Trenchtown Entertainment Park was done at a cost of 39.7 million. Barrytown Community Center and Sports Complex, the Content Adelphi Mini Sports Complex. Mr. President, presently, Mr. President, over in Somerton Adelphi area, Mr. President, a new water system is being established. Worry not yourself. Worry not yourself. Mr. President, they have been upgrading of projects, upgrading of town centers in Negril, in Montego Bay. That is happening. Beach upgrade projects. And this one, Senator Allen, you made a comment, and I want to consider it an off-the-cuff comment, because you said Harmony Park was a PMP proposal, and it was a plan left there. Far from being the truth. Far from being the truth. And you said, I want to identify you to license. I want to identify the licensed beach also. The licensed beach, which was upgraded, opened by Minister Bartlett in 2018, following a spend of 49 million. But, when you said that the Harmony Beach was a plan left by the PMP, the beach park, and the PMP did propose a beach park. But let us look at what the report says. The upgrading of the beach park was Providence Park, Providence Beach, which is one behind the airport. And that particular space now has been taken over because of the airport expansion. So as far as I'm concerned, the proposal of that has been the beach park for Montego Bay was a sham, really. Because you must have known of the Sangster International Airport project. So, Mr. President, the questions for Senator Allen. If the fortunes of the country did not change on February 25, 2016, what were then the plans that they would have had for the property which now accommodates the Harmony Beach Park? Was it their intention to place it in the hands of private owners? Yes. Mr. President, I'm happy to hear them now touting beach access. Because I asked, however, is it mere talk, or is it a philosophical change? Because Jamaicans must never forget that it was under their tenure in government that the people in St. James lost access to Rosal Beach, Damali Beach, and the one that was opened by Prime Minister Michael Manley in 1975, Cornwall Beach, Mr. President. Cornwall Beach is no longer a beach that is open to access under the PNP. Mr. President, in 2015, Puerto Rico Beach in St. Ann was privatized. So, what is it? They're now talking about beach access as if they come up with this beach access where we gave you free beach access with Harmony Beach Park. Mr. President, I've had discussions with Minister Samuda, and I've been reliably informed that an appropriate beach access policy to ensure Jamaicans continue to have access to this loved natural resource is going before Cabinet, and at some appropriate time will be before this Parliament, and I expect that to be in short order. The Tourism Enhancement Fund has seeded to ensure meaningful retirement benefits for tourism workers. And as of April 2023, after they went in ahead with the pension fund, close to 10,000 hospitality workers already contributing to this scheme. And interestingly, in the same day that Senator Allen made her presentation about deep-pocketed people, the Minister of Tourism informed this nation that over 400 entities, to include small accommodations, bike rental operators, car rental operators, coffee shop and restaurants, small businesses, Mr. President, have taken up a significant sum in respect to the loans. So, Mr. President, employment opportunity in the tourism sector is 175 direct, 350,000 indirect. These are not deep-pocketed people benefiting from employment and expected to be expanded with the expanding hotel industry in Jamaica. Mr. President, our Honorable Minister is more sensitive to the issue of worker conditions and of the tourism workers. And the Minister has commented on it. And he has concerns, and he obviously will be looking into that issue. So, Mr. President, these are just a few of the things that counter what was being put forward as fake news by my colleague across the floor. Mr. President, I wish to give attention to this chamber of the work of the Honorable Desmond McKenzie in local government and community development. He has distinguished himself, Mr. President, in leadership of that particular ministry. And that ministry has gone a far way in improving the quality of life of residents in many communities across the length and breadth of Jamaica. Mr. President, in his own words, local government plays a critical role in the development of the country. It impacts on the quality of life of many and good order in communities. What is interesting is that a bossy topic, but all major portfolios must engage with local government to implement their programs. It is full time that local government and local authorities are duly recognized. It is not a lesser type of government, or in the words of some, the bastard child of central government. Each has their respective roles to play in ensuring good order and governance of the country. Many local government practitioners, Mr. President, you hear the question being posed to them by the average citizen, when you're going to step up to MP, as if one matriculates in the same way as a student does from primary to secondary or tertiary institutions. I wish to say to those that are involved in the business of local government, persons who offer themselves for election as councillors, they must appreciate their worth and value to the good order, management, and development, not only of the communities within their particular division that they are elected to represent, but also to the parish for which the council that they are elected has responsibility. The political parties, too, which determine the representatives they put forward as local government practitioners, must ensure that the individual is up to the task in respect of commitment, intellectual and emotional capacity, desire for accountability and integrity to undertake the task of representing the best interests of the parish and its residents. So, President, local authorities have an awesome responsibility. They are not there merely for the hosting of tree lighting ceremonies and other good vibes events. There are many close to, as some say, 100 pieces of legislation which fall under their mandate, covering a wide range of matters which affect the lives of ordinary Jamaicans. The principal at the Local Governance Act sets out the functions of local authorities, which mandate them as lawmakers, law enforcement agencies, development and implementing agencies. In the words of one writer, local authorities are empowered to make bylaws, regulations, and rules for the good governance and development of their respective parish. Those functions take place within a context of citizen participation. So, President, it is of utmost importance for municipal corporations to be strengthened in all respects. The human resource capability must be bolstered to take on the challenges of a changing society. This includes improving on the staff numbers, salary scales, and the buildings from which persons have to undertake their tasks. When I look at some of the buildings in which councils have to sit and operate, they need to be improved and upgraded. Equally, municipal corporations, Mr. President, must be given sufficient autonomy to efficiently and effectively carry out their functions. It cannot be the case that undertaking a simple task, such as leasing or disposing of property, requires the approval of the minister. Cannot be. It is my opinion that in strengthening municipal corporations will facilitate rationalization between local authority and central government. It boggles my mind, Mr. President, as to why we continue to maintain a National Works Agency office in every parish that is fully staffed, but not being able to undertake basic maintenance work. In the present dispensation, one gets into a debate as to who has responsibility to correct potholes on one particular road as against another. And so we need to look at that issue. But, Mr. President, the Honorable Minister of Local Government and Community Development must be commended for the manner in which he has managed the portfolio. Himself being a local government practitioner, including the Mayor of Kingston, is very appreciative of the aforementioned comments that I have made. So, Mr. President, how was local government under his management? Yes, sir.
Senator Scott Motley, I heard your threat earlier. Let me just see if you're going to live up to it.
Are you recognizing me from here? Yes. I have made a promise to the Speaker, which the Speaker's time having expired, may I ask that it be extended to allow him to conclude his presentation?
You have heard the question. Those in favor? Senator Sinclair, thank you.
Yes, and it is going to get to an end shortly. Not to worry yourself. Mr. President, under the Honorable Desmond McKenzie, we have had the Youth Summer Employment Program. Mr. President, there's a saying that our youths should also always be meaningfully engaged. And every summer since 2016 to current, this administration has ensured that some 6,500 to 7,000 young people are engaged in programs and activities across the country through the portfolio entities under the ministry. Most ever, yes. The program, Mr. President, has been welcomed by youngsters all over the country as they are engaged in meaningful activity whilst earning an income and gaining valuable skills and work experience. And in the case of many, have gained employment in the same municipal corporations that they were attached. So, President, we look on what has been done at the National Solid Waste and Management Authority. And it is a pleasure to be part of an administration, Mr. President, which has moved our sanitary workers from the category of contract workers to full employee status. The benefits to be derived from this change on the psyche and well-being of the employee is invaluable. It is clear that this is the first stage of a larger program across the public sector to move away from contract employment to persons being employees with the trappings of full-time employees. When one adds to that the announcement by the Honorable Minister of Finance that come April 2024, the salary of the lowest paid public sector workers will double. Even the most vociferous opponent, Mr. President, will applaud this as a move in the right direction. Mr. President, this is a government caring for workers and sending the signal to the private sector to follow suit. Mr. President, in respect to rural water projects under the portfolio of Minister Mackenzie, we hear the comment, water is life. That's a slogan used by the National Water Commission. But under this administration, the Rural Water Supply Limited has ensured potable water is now in many areas not reached by the National Water Commission. So in St. James, the community of Flower Hill benefited with an expenditure of over $100 million, whereby water was taken into communities shared between Northwest St. James and Central St. James. Water, which is a product not seen in that community for over 35 years. Under this administration, we're not talking, we're talking potable water, not rainfall water. After 35 years, Mr. President, and a spend by this administration of $100 million, Flower Hill in St. James is now with water. Projects to a value of $264 million have been completed in communities served by the Watermount Water Supply in St. Catherine, Chambers Pen Water Supply over in Hanover, the Penn and Lucky Valley in St. Catherine again, Portland Cottage, Rocky Point, Brandon Hill and Salt River in Clarendon, Como, Mango Valley in St. Mary, Top Aberdeen Water Supply System in St. Elizabeth has seen improvements under this local government minister to the tune of $264 million. We're looking at over 20,000 residents benefiting from the improved delivery of potable water into their homes. Mr. President, the Chambers Pen water supply system is just part of the larger overall development and revitalization of the Chambers Pen community in Hanover under the Rural Development Program, which is being done as a pilot project at a cost of $230 million. So, Mr. President, whilst we improve our economic situation in Jamaica, we are having this administration doing projects that impact upon the small man, the average man, every community, right across Jamaica. Water being improved, supplies being improved, Mr. President. Mr. President, I touch on markets, which is possibly the area which could best be described as a place where social interaction of persons from all social and economic backgrounds converge on a weekly basis to engage in business transactions. They have also benefited under this minister. I know every Friday we would come here and Senator Rodriguez Campbell would say to us at the end of each sitting, she's going down to Coronation Market, Mr. President. That is where everybody, no matter where they come from up so or down here, you go to the marketplace and you have intermingling of persons of all kinds. Improvements and developments for the comfort of vendors and patrons have been done in Falmouth, Clarkstown, both of them in Trelawney, the Stony Hill Market in St. Andrew, Hopewell in Hanover, Mr. President, and the Charles Garden Market in Montego Bay and Negril in Westmoreland have now started their process of improvement. Mr. President, while this administration is building and improving on markets, there are some that have been affected by fire, and some of these have been determined as man-made. Mr. President, these acts of arson must be condemned. In the last 12 to 15 months, at least 10 markets across the country have been damaged by fire, with vendors and consumers suffering loss and dislocation. The latest occurred at the Old Shoe Market in Montego Bay. Many of these acts I opine are orchestrated to create disruption and to raise the misery index of residents. I am happy, however, to report that the St. James Municipal Corporation, with Acting Mayor Richard Vernon, proactively leading from the front, has engaged the vendors in a meaningful way to commence a dialogue on the restoration process. They shall rise, Mr. President, from the ashes like a phoenix, and it is a commitment of the St. James Municipal Corporation that a new facility will be constructed to accommodate the vendors. Mr. President, one of the recent fires occurred at the Musgrave Market in Portland, and Minister Darrell Vaz and Member of Parliament, Mrs. Anne-Marie Vaz, must be commended. Pardon me. Mrs. Anne-Marie Vaz, Member of Parliament, must be commended for their swift response to the plight of those whose livelihoods were disrupted. They have raised, through contributions of donors, in excess of $42 million to assist the recovery effort. Mrs. Vaz herself committed her increased salary to the people. So, President, they have made real the saying is action to that, not a bag of mouth. Action, dear man. Yes, dear man. So, President, to date, $20 million have been disbursed to over 200 vendors in that space. Our firefighters have given committed human service to our country, and they are deserving of better and the best facilities. And new stations have been constructed in 2023, 2022-2023 financial year, a major achievement. In Montego Bay, the station, which had to be demolished as the structure was declared unsound, got on track under this administration and was constructed on time and within budget. Our brave men and women languish in difficult circumstances at rented premises from which they themselves would need rescuing after a heavy shower of rain, whilst the current location was used as a temporary park by a former PNP administration. Other towns benefiting from improvement works to their fire stations include Old Harbour, Port Maria, Yallas, Black River, Balaclava, and Ulster Spring. Mr. President, local government under Desmond McKenzie is performing well. Mr. President, it is a sign of a caring government, how it provides for the aged and infirm and vulnerable. Other than the improvements in the pension payments under NIS and PATH benefits, this administration has provided social pension benefits to over 30,000 citizens who are over 75 years of age and not supported through any social payment. It should never be forgotten that when a past JLP administration conceptualized and implemented the NIS, which today is assisting thousands of Jamaicans, the PNP administration opposed it and called it sin. So, President, with the compensation review, many in the twilight of their years will see a better return on their pension benefits. Under the HOPE program, the Honorable Prime Minister has delivered over 170 homes to persons in need. And from the perspective of the Ministry of Local Government, Mr. President, over 45 indigent infirmaries in the parishes of Westmoreland, Portland, Manchester, Hanover, St. Catherine, St. Mary, St. James, and Trelawney have been improved by this administration. Therapeutic parks with their gazebos and water pools provide a space for outside recreation and social interaction amongst residents. That is a novel concept. Previously, you walk into an infirmary, you have the person just basically locked away within the dorms that they occupy. Now we have therapeutic parks and gazebos where they can go out and they can enjoy the fresh air. They can share the space with visitors and so forth. Mr. President, this administration is aware of the potential vulnerability of people. Today, we may be fit and well taken care of and able to take care of our own affairs. Tomorrow, you may be, for one reason or another, experiencing hard times. Mr. President, this administration does not endorse moving people who find themselves on hard times to a mud lake in St. Elizabeth, Manchester, or wherever, but to place them in situations that can guarantee them a better quality of life. While the state acts in protection of the vulnerable, I continue to advocate for the application of the relevant provisions of the Maintenance Act as it applies to local authorities obtaining maintenance orders, as well as children being required to maintain their parents who are unable to maintain themselves. In that regard, I appeal to the moral conscience of children who may not even have received the ideal or expected care of a parent. They must learn to forgive. Do not abandon your loved ones in hospitals or infirmaries. To my mind, Mr. President, providing maintenance can be given a broad interpretation, which includes caregiving, providing social interaction, etc. As the Bible says, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ, God, forgave you. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. So that is my appeal to the children and persons who believe that they should not take on the responsibility of assisting their parents that are in need. Mr. President, the Local Governance Act is up for review. And discussions that I have had with the Honorable Minister has assured me that he has it on his schedule. In our changing environment, there is a need for continued reform of municipal corporations to strengthen their accountability framework and to improve their ability to carry out their mandate. I look forward, under that continuing review and reform, to the implementation of municipal courts, whether as an independent court or established within the existing parish court structure. If the latter, there should be specific days set aside to deal with municipal matters. And municipal matters covers a wide gamut of things that go to the good order of society. In that environment, municipal breaches can be dealt with in a focused way and with the seriousness that they deserve. As a revolutionary proposal, I propose that the fines imposed in municipal courts be returned directly to the respective municipalities. I look forward to the day where municipal corporations will have their own legal unit with competent officers to guide the corporations on the many legislations under their portfolio and to draft the necessary bylaws or rules they are entitled to for the good governance of the respective areas. Mr. President, whilst the minister and the ministry is doing its wonderful work and undertaking the mammoth task that it has for the past 6 to 7 years, I appeal to the residents of all communities to get on board in taking charge of their communities and to be catalysts of change and development. I will make to them some brief recommendations. That they are to, 1, form themselves into appropriate legal units by registering as benevolent societies or using the simple CDC concept used by the Social Development Commission, but both will improve and impose principles of accountability, transparency, and facilitate greater coordination, cohesiveness, and participation. These will go a far way in bringing positive change within communities. So, President, forming legal entities affords the opportunity for the communities themselves to write their own projects and apply for grant from funding agencies, whether locally or internationally. The Social Development Commission working in coordination with the office with responsibility for friendly societies are integral to the process. Mr. President, in St. James, and in my division in particular, we have been able to establish a benevolent society. And they go so far as to be involved with the municipal corporation in respect to the building and land development process. I'm of the view, Mr. President, that that is what has kept us on that side of the island off the radar of the Supreme Court when compared to well-known cases that has arisen in St. Andrew, in which residents have been pitted against developers. This process of inclusion has worked well for existing residents and potential developers. Standards and expectations are known from an early stage, thus removing the elements of contention, disappointments, and the wasting of resources which arise when you have contested matters. Mr. President, there have been several high-profile cases in the Supreme Court relating to developments in the Kingston and St. Andrew area in which residents have been pitted against the developers. Orders have been made by the courts which may have potentially crippling effects on a developer or a person investing in one of the developments as a purchaser. So, if we adopt the approach that we have done in St. James, I believe, as I said, it will go a far way in avoiding these pitfalls and hurdles. And what I have discovered is that residents in our communities are not anti-development nor opposed to change, but they are prepared to accept change, but change that is not so radical as to damage long-standing scheme arrangements or the aesthetics, the serenity, or result in the invasion of privacy of the existing homes. So whilst I put out that recommendation, I want to say that I support and stand with the residents in St. Andrew who have stood against rogue developers and have placed their money where their mouth is. They must be commended for what they have done. Mr. President, communities, many communities, particularly the older communities, they have resources. But what I find is that the residents don't appreciate what they have there. Many of the communities across Jamaica, I describe them as being bountiful. They have properties within their scheme that are branded as community lands and which are held by the municipal corporations in trust for the residents. As I said, these are generally found in the older developments. Many of these lots, you find them as remaining as undeveloped, and they are not necessarily needed by the community. These properties may be disposed of. It's an opinion that I got from the Attorney General when I was sitting as mayor in Montego Bay, to say that they can dispose of these properties, and the capital return from the disposition of those properties can be used to do capital developments within the community. And so, for example, in Ironshore, we are disposing of a few community lands. They don't have a community center, but desire a community center, which they have a planned use for, a use that can improve your ability to earn and to reinvest in your community. And we have moved along that line and disposed of community lands that are not used but are overgrown in bush, that is going to be used for development, and those funds are going to be placed in the construction of an immaculate and beautiful community center, or a community that had no community center. Mr. President, I encourage leaders, councillors, to consider, I have not heard anyone speak of this, the utilization of Section 45 of the Local Governance Act. That section is complemented by Sections 20 to 22 of the Local Governance Financing and Financial Management Act. Under those provisions, a local authority may by order declare an area within its jurisdiction as a business improvement district or a special improvement district, with its purpose of allowing one or more improvement projects to be carried out for the benefit of the inhabitants or those who work or carry on any activity in the area. So I'm suggesting to persons who are in leadership, community leadership, councillors, look at it. It's a little cumbersome in its application when you read through it. And I've suggested to the Minister of Local Government that in the review that we are going to be undertaking, that we can look on how we can make it a simpler process, because communities can now start acting and participating in their development process by the use of this particular section. Mr. President, to work with the PDC, municipal corporation and elected council to attract meaningful projects in their area. Partnership among stakeholders will go a far way in supporting government programs to improve the quality of life. But significant projects can originate from within the community. Give you another example. In the St. James community of Canterbury, in collaboration with the Parish Development Committee and other stakeholders, including Sandals Foundation, is now in the process, Mr. President, of implementing a $38 million development project under the aegis of the UN Habitat. It is expected that through this project, green space and a multi-purpose community center will be developed. It is expected that on completion, these areas will be owned and managed by the community and provide a center of support, social cohesion, recreational skills training, and social services to the community of Canterbury. And in that regard, I commend the residents, I commend the Councillor Richard Vernon, who has worked tirelessly for this project to come to where it is and is now in the implementation stage, and the other stakeholders that are participating in the process. So, Mr. President, local government, this administration, and I spoke widely, spoke about matters in the tourism sector under local government. We have done very well under the leadership of Minister Edmund Bartlett, Minister Desmond McKenzie, and the best Prime Minister Jamaica has ever seen, Andrew Michael Williams. Mr. President, we, Jamaica, must not change course. Let us undertake the reforms that are necessary to build our communities. Let us undertake the task to make our communities safer. Let us undertake the task to make Jamaica peaceful. Let us undertake to make the economy of Jamaica the best that it can be, and for its citizens to achieve their ultimate goal of prosperity. Mr. President, I thank you. I thank the members. I thank you, Madam Scott Motley, for your extension. If it so please you, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Senator Crawford, I recognize you from a seat other than your own. Yes, Senator Crawford, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not just for today's opportunity, but for your excellent leadership of the Senate. And I'm sure your commitment to give me ample protection from someone that side that are intent on distracting me. Intent. I have made great effort to be great friends with the leader of opposition business for this reason. So, yes, I see that. Mr. President, I want to. Mr. President, I want to thank my speechwriters behind me here. No. They were saying, they were ensuring, yes, great protection. They were ensuring that I made mention of the unfortunate trend that has evolved for bomb threats to be sent to schools. Just today, 3 schools, including St. George's College, had to end the school because of what is becoming a sick joke of constant threats to the schools. What it has proven, Mr. President, is that the sanctity of education has been robbed from the society, removed. The appreciation for schools, and unfortunately too, the appreciation for churches, have been removed from our society and replaced with a culture of dunceness that cause for someone not to recognize the importance of allowing schools to continue, but to make a joke and hopefully, in their opinion, a name from doing such negative activities. Whoever, I would say, that scoundrel is, or whomever they are, I would add my voice to call upon them to cease and desist and to allow our children to work on their future and the improvement that is necessary. Mr. President, last year I gave a presentation called Code Red in Crisis. This year I would like to focus on some solutions, and so the name of the speech is From Crisis to Crimson: Solutions for Education Transformation in Jamaica. To set the context of this conversation, of course, we have to remind ourselves once again what is a crisis. And a crisis is defined as a difficult or dangerous time in which a solution is needed quickly. A difficult or dangerous time for which a solution is needed quickly. I mean, just what I said a second ago about a trend of bomb threats to schools is indeed evidence that a solution is needed quickly. There was once a time that a principal would automatically be the leader of the community because of the reverence people had for teacher. There was once a time that a teacher would have been revered within their space. And no parent. I remember when we were at school, parents said, "Save him, yeah," and that was it. Your mom would give teacher full authority over ensuring your development. Now we're watching the television news to hear fights among parents and the teachers. But even worse, fights among students and teachers. We are indeed at a time that is dangerous, and the solution is needed quickly. Indeed, a crisis is defined as a crucial stage or turning point in the course of something, and in this case, education, and requires immediate action, an event that occurs at a critical time. There should be no doubt in our minds that we are at that stage, that it's not only a problem, but indeed a crisis. Last year's presentation gave ample evidence of that crisis, and I'll reiterate just one of those examples that exist, which is the PEP results. In the PEP results from last year, 2022, it showed that proficiency, 40 49% of our children did not achieve proficiency in mathematics. So of every two, one was not proficient in mathematics. In science, 42.7% was not proficient. In social studies, 46.4% was not proficient. And in English language, this is 23% were not proficient at the 6th grade level. Indeed, the results are not very different for 2023, suggesting a continuation of the crisis. Mr. President, in the last PEP results, 11,581 of the students who took the PEP were not proficient in social studies. 11,581 did not achieve basic proficiency. In the sciences, 12,790 students in the cohort, not over the last 10 years. In 1 year of 34,000 in the cohort, 12,790 did not achieve basic proficiency, about 36%. For language arts, 14,003 did not achieve minimum proficiency in language arts. And in mathematics, 15,374 did not achieve proficiency. Sometimes when we say 41% and 49%, we are not recognizing the realities that we are facing, that going into secondary school education, having ended 6th grade to enter 7th grade, 15,374 were not achieving basic proficiency in mathematics. And unfortunately, Mr. President, instead of acknowledging the crisis, the Ministry of Education has chosen to sell snake oil to the public by saying, and I quote, 57% scored in the proficient or highly proficient category in mathematics, when compared to 41% in 2019. Language arts saw 55% score in 2019, and this increased to 60% of students score in 2023. Now, none of this is untrue, but I wondered to myself, why would the ministry choose to compare 2023 results with 2019? Why not 2022? Or why not 2021? So I went to dive into this understanding as to what is the reason that they may be focusing on a comparison with 2019 as versus 2022. So to mask the drop-off in the PEP results between 2022 and 2023, where in 2023, in particular in language arts, 14,000 students were not proficient in 2023, as versus 8,000 students in 2022. So on not wanting to show that almost 100% increase in the lack of proficiency in 2023, the ministry decided to sell a lie to the population by comparing it to a period that they have improved. Now, this is difficult to pronounce on a person without a trend. So I then looked at, in the same year, CXC report. And in this CXC report, the same 2023, 29 was not used, 2019.
What was used?
Instead, 2022 was used.
Why?
So here the ministry says here, for CXC, mathematics and English, recorded percentage passes of 44% and 72% respectively, when the average attainment rates were compared to 2022 results, there was a 7.5% increase in math and a 7.3% increase in English language. So the ministry decided to ignore 2019 for the CXC, but to use it for the PEP. So it is imperative to see if this really is an effort to deceive, to look how we compared with 2019 CXC. 2019 CXC wasn't used because for 2019, English had an 82.8%, which would show a reduction to 77, and in 2019, math had a 54.6%, which would have shown a reduction to 44. So the inconsistency is based on finding whatever year, if that favors. How can we depend for solutions when we are focused on selling a lie based on whatever is beneficial? I would have accepted the argument that pre-COVID, had both CXC and PEP used 2019. I would have still wondered why 2022 wasn't used, but I would have accepted a mistake more so than a misleading effort and attempt. This effort by the ministry to mislead is not unusual because they have also done it with the teacher migration. But even more recently, the minister has stated, and I quote, 32 of 38 public schools have been taken off shift system as part of the ministry's effort to transform the sector. Now, if 32 of 38 public schools have been taken off the shift system, then simple mathematics would suggest that 6 schools should remain on the shift system. The maths isn't mathsing because Olaba High School is still on shift. Spanish Town High School, Seaford High School, Port Antonio High School, Brownstown High School, St. James High School, Christiana, Jonathan Grant, Donald Quarry, Ocherios, Norman Manley, Cedric Titus, Exchange, Albertown, Green Island, Papine are all still on shift.
More than 6.
So on what information could the ministry, in quoting the minister, state that 32 of 38 were removed, thereby leaving 6? I'm making this point because if you are not willing to accept the truth, then the solutions cannot be likely to be found. Indeed, if we were willing to accept the truth in PEP, then immediately we should try to understand the disparity that exists between the 4-grade literacy and PEP. Senator Fitzhenley. On average, 4-grade literacy is saying 85% literate. Then how it is that when we reach 2 years further, we're getting 48 and 41% not achieving proficiency. At this point, a ministry that accepts the truth will then seek to understand if it is a testing problem, or if it is an approach problem, or it is a teacher problem, but what would cause for what is satisfactory in 4th grade, the end of 4th grade, to become unsatisfactory in 2 years. But busy trying to find which year we should use. Busy trying to sell a lie. Indeed, the results show that for what is accepted to be an appreciable graduating status, what America will call it GED, we say it's 5 subjects including math and English. Senator Webby, in 2021, of the 36,748 students enrolled in 11th grade, only 6,323 received 5 subjects, including math and English.
Please repeat.
That is a 17.2%. Of the total 36,748, 6,323 received 5 subjects, including math and English. 30,000 did not. 30,000, 17.2%, 2020, 28.4%, 2019, 25.5%, 2018, 26.4%, 2017, 22.2%. At no time we get 30% achieving the required standard of 5 subjects, including math and English. If I should look at this here, of the 170 students that were in the 5-year cohort, only 42,000 received the necessary output that is necessary. This, indeed, is a failing education system where it is found by the World Bank that a child in Jamaica can expect to complete 11.4 years of education, but will have the quality of learning equivalent to 7.1 years. That though they have invested 11.4 years, their quality of learning is equivalent to if they had invested 7.1 years, given what the World Bank call a learning gap of 4.3 years. It goes further to say, according to the World Bank, a child born in Jamaica today will be 53% as productive when they grow up as they would have been if they enjoyed complete education and full health. This is World Bank saying that a child today in Jamaica is 53% productivity, losing 47% of their productivity. So, and I have always heard you, Senator Hill, about the productivity in the Jamaican context. I've always heard yourself saying that we need to improve on the productivity. And the World Bank is saying that there is a low-hanging fruit, that if they grow healthy and get adequate education, 47% is being left on the table if this investment was made. I don't want to answer yet. I want him up. I want him up. So I don't want to answer yet. I'm just talking to you. I'm just talking to you. Yes. So when we say from crisis to crimson, I use crimson because the color of Harvard is crimson. Yeah. I should have left him alone. I should have left him alone. But the color of Harvard. And I chose Harvard because we want an education system that has the reputation, the influence, the global acceptance that Harvard has. Unquestionable is the standard that they have in the education system. Indeed, when you go to my personal color is royalty. But the KC might be questioned by some bad mind people. But Harvard cannot be questioned any at all. Indeed, on the website it says, Harvard's reputation and influence make it a symbol of excellence in education, setting standards for academic achievement and contributing significantly to the advancement of knowledge and the development of future leaders in various fields. So when we say we want to move from crisis to crimson, we are saying that we want an education system unquestionable.
It's in the red line.
In the red line. So can I have some water? Yes, it's getting me warm. So when we're searching for a solution, for more in-depth conversation on the problems, you can go to last year's presentation. But moving forward, the solution comes through the application of the impact logic. Now, the impact logic begins with an end in mind. What do we want at the end? And therefore, what we must do to get there at the end of this thing. It's about creating in a structured way a reason through specific activities or interventions that lead to broader changes and contribute to desired outcomes. Indeed, we must therefore ask ourselves, what's the purpose of education? We have somehow continuously focused on only one aspect of the purpose of education, a workforce. And indeed, we do not train people for the workforce. We train people for the opportunities. So that is a difference. That is why I love mathematics, because in vectors, it said that there is a distance and a direction. If we train for the workforce, then the priority is the company. If we train for the opportunities, then equally we'll be training. If tourism is the opportunity, we'll be training people to take advantage of tourism opportunity. But we're not training them for the hotel. No. We're training them for those opportunities that exist. Yes. But I don't know why I started off here. But you'll know that even the university have a degree in hotel management and tourism management. No. What we're saying is that there are people such as Talcott Parsons who argue that after the family, education takes over as the most important agent of socialization. So when we just focus on training for the workforce, not realizing that our education system from nursery to university should be training a citizen. Yes. Training for our society. Right. And therefore, from nursery to university, the schools are the focal socializing agent. They act as a bridge between the family and the wider society, teaching people how to navigate society. That is what education should be. The national curriculum, therefore, should no longer center on just British values and individual needs, but instead should prepare pupils to survive in a globalized world. Indeed, it is listed within the sociology literature that functions of education include socialization, social placement, social and cultural innovation, indeed creating a workforce, creating social solidarity, and producing ideology. Yes. One of the reasons that we have lost our Jamaicanness, the Jamaicanness, what is Jamaican? Yes. Is because our education system has reserved itself only to training a workforce than to reminding our citizenship of why we are what we are and how it works. To this extent, I'm going to suggest that the role of education is to transition an individual from youth to adulthood and by extension along what is called the maturity continuum. Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey says that along the maturity continuum, you start at dependence. It's like a baby. I speak to my little one, Tutus there. You have to lift her up every minute. Yes. Yes. He's a fan of Tutus. But from dependence, there's a transition throughout what we call youth to independence. And according to Stephen Covey, that the maturity continuum is that the first stage is to move from dependence to independence, but the societal benefit moves from independence to interdependence. So therefore, in your adulthood, you should be in a position that people can depend on you equally as you depend on them. We have created within our society a vast majority of dependence even after youth. That is why everybody wants to run a boat, but nobody wants to buy the groceries. Because they're all dependent. They haven't transitioned in their youth from dependence to independence, so that in their adulthood, they could contribute to interdependence. The synergies of a society is dependent upon our education system delivering independent adults. And not What it is, in my mind, I believe, is an independent adult. And we have accepted that the period of youth is 30 years. in the society. We have said that youth ends at 30. We have said that children ends at 18. But youth ends at 30. So at the age of 30, I believe that a Jamaican should legitimately have an undergraduate degree or its equivalent. And I am looking at the good senator here because with the vocation somehow, the diminished vocation to its equivalent, like you cannot, why we can't at some point have a BSc in electrical? Why we act as if it can't be? Why we have it's like we try to separate it. So we say it's equivalent. But because I don't want the confusion that we are not accepting the trades, the mechanics, the levels that heart is carrying our people, right? We are saying equivalent to a degree. But a 30-year-old, in the main, we would be happy if by this time they have an undergraduate or its equivalent. Indeed, we would be happy, Senator Dan Webby, if at 30 he's 5% into his pension. Yes. Because we need to start to accept that duty, that from early we should start to recognize and contribute to a pension. Yes. Indeed, he should have access to health insurance, yes. That by 30. And yeah, but by 30, because some is going to be a late starter. You understand? Senator Brian would tell that if the 10th grade may never go on so good. Not all of us start early. Should have 10% ahead in home ownership. Don't mean him now have a home, but him at least have a little thing put on. Him can move to that percent. Should have gone through parental training. Yes. By the age of 30. The likelihood that they would be a parent is so high, but very little training. In fact, I read somewhere, Senator Braham, and you would know as a pastor, that to get married to another adult, you have to go through counseling. But to take on a baby, nothing. You just decide that you want one. And if you don't decide, yes. Well, listen, I want protection, Mr. President. Senator Braham has been promoting all these things. Should have exposure to entrepreneurship and mentorship by the age of 30. Should have full exposure to civics, and I congratulate the Ministry of Education who has now introduced civics into about 200 schools. The Ministry of Education is worthy of congratulations. But the 30-year-old should be exposed to civics, full exposure by that time. Should have completed a year of volunteerism. There was a time that we were a volunteer society. And should have identified their most likely area of earning. That is what I perceive an independent Jamaican to be at the age of 30. Yes. And so, if we're going to do that, then, of course, our education system has set the milestones. We have set the milestones of conception to birth. That's an important period for education. For some reason, we have separated education from all the other realities, such as health. But a child conceived healthy has in many occasions been born with difficulties, based simply on the nutritional component that the mother has exposed herself to. That is why the pregnancy path contribution is so important, but also so unfortunately low. Because you want to get a child conceived healthy, to be born healthy, not to be born with learning deficiencies because nutrition was absent in that period. There's an important period of 1 to 3 years. That is what the last Minister of Education said that was so important that they were putting in Brain Builders Association. We'll come to that. Pre-primary. There's a 4 to 6 years basic school. There's a 7 to 12 years primary, the 13 to 15 years, that's the lower secondary, the 16 to 18, that's the upper secondary, 19 to 21, usually the university, and 22 to 29. These milestones have been defined by our society. And so what we are therefore faced with is a acceptance of crisis and a report put before us called the Patterson report. I'm not sure, Mr. President, of how much of us have heard of the Patterson report. But the fact that the Patterson report has not been debated in Parliament is indeed a dereliction of duty. How is it an area so important can have a report called the Patterson report that should set the pathway for intervention and change, and the Parliament don't debate it? Yes, the Patterson brought great joy and passion. We still say PJ. No, yes. Dr. Orlando Patterson. But the major point is that rural members of Parliament should want to analyze the 365 recommendations to see if rural schools are satisfactorily dealt with. Inner city members of Parliament should want to understand and understand if it is dealing with their complications satisfactorily. The Minister of Industry, the Minister of Gender, the Minister of Labor should want to have a say into where we're going with education. How can the Patterson report be thrown to a ministry and not debated?
Makes no sense. Not if you have a plan for the future.
Not if we intend to show its seriousness. Let us not neglect the fact that most times the Minister of Education is not the most powerful political practitioner in their political party.
True.
Go through our history. Most times, the Minister of Education isn't the most powerful political individual. Therefore, the conviction of the Patterson report, if we accept, must be something that even a joint select committee should discuss. It cannot be passed on to EPAC and ESAT and Eli and all these people. It must be a factor that is debated in this Parliament. I'm calling for at least a joint select committee.
We have to get to Crimson.
To carry us to Crimson. To carry us to Crimson. But the,
Mr. President, with permission to speak from my own seat, I'm going to ask that in spite of everything, we extend the Speaker's time until he's completed.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
The
you,
members
my-
will have heard the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Against?
I was hoping that would have been moved by my good friend. Please get her back here. So I will speak till the 2 o'clock, the 1:20, so that my leader of government business can give me a blight. Thank you, my colleagues. You know what, therefore, Mr. President, is the worst part of the Patterson report, in my opinion? Is that it's 98% similar to the Davis report. The Davis report that was in 2004 and the Patterson report that was in 2022 exposed almost the same problems in two reports. It shows that very little has changed and very little has been fixed between 2024 and 2022. I said to us in this house, 2004 and 2022. I said to us, that is 18 years. I said to us in this Parliament, I said to us in this political game, I said to us in this government business, that it would be an unfortunate reality that in 2042 we have another report reflecting similar realities as this Patterson report. One of the realities that has been stated in both reports is the two-school system that exists. That we have a set of schools that are desired schools, and a set of schools, one of them, and a set of schools that are undesired schools. Just to make it sound better, we say traditional and non-traditional. But the truth is that there are desired schools and there are undesired schools. The truth is that even though we claim that 90% get a school of their choice, you know, Senator Sapphire Longmore, you know how 90% get a school of their choice? Then pick up to 7 schools. If you pick 7 schools,
One is your choice.
Jesus peace, man. You know what time we used to pick 2?
Yes.
They pick 7. But to sell that, you say, oh, they get one of the choice. But when they get one of those 7 undesired schools, them still cry. They still ask for a transfer.
Yes.
They still
They don't feel
have
low
low
value.
esteem and value because those schools were determined to be undesired. What are some of the realities of that? We have seen that there's a ranking that said that there are schools in this country with less than 1% chance of getting 5 subjects. That there are other schools with 92% chance. Immaculate Conception was 96% chance. Them beat out Campion. And Senator Braham, even though we are very thinking about traditional schools, a lot of the traditional schools, including the Calabars, were hovering at 60 and 63. They were in at 90s. Only 44 of the 162 schools was over 50%. 122 schools was under 50%. So what are some of the things that the Patterson report has highlighted? It says that language adaptability was absent. Language adaptability. It is the recognition that English is not our first language. Now, I don't buy into the argument that we should treat English like our first language and therefore ignore Patois. Nor do I buy that Patois should be king and lord of the society. If Patois is king and lord, who would we communicate with in the world? In fact, from when I was a little child, it says, so that Jamaica may increase in beauty and play a part for the whole human race. So English is important, but the acceptance that is not the mother tongue is also important. Patterson says that we have not looked at that. Centuries of underfunding. Allocations based on needs is important for schools. Tertiary participation woefully unacceptable. Jamaica is 27%, Trinidad is 65%, Barbados is 64%. Child Opportunity Trust Fund was recommended, use of technology at all levels, and cost sharing. Now, I'm going to quickly just go to cost sharing. I'm not a supporter, I'm not an advocate for cost sharing. Because, indeed, the cost is already shared. For example, you don't buy uniform for the children. You don't pay bus fare for the children. You don't pay for books for the children. Most of them don't get lunch money from the government. So when people advocate for cost sharing and act as if the fee is the only contribution, the vast majority of the cost of education does not fall to the government, it falls to the individual. The cost is already shared. But then there are some advocates who come with a rubbish argument about nothing is free. That is true. Nothing is free, but most of the roads we drive on, we don't pay. So what then means nothing is free, that you have to pay personally? Very few of our roads and the roads dearer than the school fee. And some of our most wealthy who utilize all these roads talk about nothing free, nothing free. Nothing is free, but it don't mean that the individual must take the cost. There are many things that the government has taken the cost. Security don't free. And the police show up at your yard when you call them. Should we have to pay for the police visit? So I'm saying to you that the cost is already shared. But if it is that we go to fee sharing, then all we're doing, in my opinion, is confirming the inequities within our education system. Because there are some schools that are better able to charge enough money than other schools. I've heard of schools, Senator Braham, 70,000 even now. What you call it? Auxiliary fees. Could Kingston High get 70,000 from anyone? No. So what would be the level of education at a school that get government 10,000 and charge 70,000 compared to a school that government get 10,000 and charge 3,000? You don't see that cost sharing simply allows for the desired school to be more desirable and the non-desired schools to be further undesirable. Not only for students, but also for teachers. You know, one of the biggest negative of the migration, The biggest negative of the migration is that if a school like KC lose 10, they go over to a school like Clancarty and take 10. Because that teacher would have found it equally desirable for many cases to move to the schools that are more desirable. And so when we say, oh, KC has filled their 10, from where? Clancarty has now been left with the bag, losing their 10. So when you say cost sharing, without talking about cost covering, that is the intent of our society, to cover the true cost of education. And if it's government must do it, government should do it.
That's right.
But the whole thing about cost sharing is, to me, an unfortunate reality. For centuries, our education has been underfunded. Any exposure to history would tell you that education was not a priority in our history. Slavery right through. And so therefore, when we did the research, it suggests that up to $8,000 per child for every $1,000 US spent, you get a 14 percentage points increase. Up to 8,000 US. So they say that this is an N curve that basically sees a continuous rise up to 8,000 and then it starts to decline with every additional at the margins. You don't get equal returns after 8,000. We are somewhere in the case of 1,100. The recommendation is that we get to that level of 8,000. Now, the 8,000 is in what you would call the developed countries. So therefore, what I did was to find a purchasing power parity. And in purchasing power parity, 8,000 in the US research would have been 3,500 in Jamaica's purchasing power parity. I'm using, this was 2021. And so, because we know we also have better teachers, better principals, better people, just give me 70% of that. You don't have to give me the full 100. Because our principal will take them and make fashion. But there are certain things that we must accept, that critical spending, without critical spending, it can't change. Without reasonable spending. We continue to say that we put 5% of our GDP, the majority is to pay the teachers. Senator Webby, if we had a budget for security, where the vast majority, over 80%, was to pay the police, and we have no car, we have no surveillance equipment, we have no police station improvement, we have nothing other than paying in the main the police, would we be satisfied with the security?
No, we couldn't be.
Could not be.
Could not be.
In this case, no, this is not. Sorry? But that's the point we're making. In our teaching, in our education budget, the vast majority of the budget is for paying the teachers. Very little in contributing to the education delivery. That is the point. And there is no other ministry that would be satisfied with that.
So why should education be satisfied?
But we are satisfied with that in education. No.
No, man. You know, come on,
So
people.
simplistic is the argument that a request for more than just the payment is a assumption that we're saying take away some payment. If the principal get the same 300,000 that the 300% the Prime Minister get, we wouldn't have a quarrel right now. But no, they would have taken it. But what we're saying is this. I would hope that the recommendation for school-based allocation or school-specific allocation isn't carried to a simplistic nature of simply saying, campaign have more so them forget less from government. Or Casey alumni and Woolmer's alumni and Monroe alumni is strong, so they must get less from government. We cannot really be intending to put our education system on the whims and fancy of contributions of kindness. No. There must be a better strategy, a better formula, a better methodology for that understanding.
Yes.
And so I took the time to seek to design such a formula.
Oh, that's what we're talking about. Design it, Damian. Teach them, teach them.
On the principle. On the principle. Huh? Yes, yes, don't worry yourself.
No worries.
On the principle
Talk to the people.
that education outcomes is a function of student performance, student safety, student socialization, stakeholder satisfaction, and efficiency. A school that is of a higher variance between desired performance and current performance should receive a higher allocation because it will take greater investment to move them from current to the desired. So therefore, in this particular category, Campion would get less than Papine because Campion is closer to the desired than Papine. It also would mean that this school will get a labor contribution because you might need smaller classes, you might need literacy teachers, you might need extension activities, you might be in Evelyn, you might need specialists so that they can come up. But if you give the same 17,000 per student per year to Kingston High, without considering the performance gap, that can be a problem. Indeed, we look at the safety. Yes. Now, the safety is a function of a few things, including the plant size. It has nothing to do with a Campion have more rich people. If Campion have a bigger plant size, then it must get more money to secure a bigger plant size. Because at the end of the day, that fencing and all of that and security is dependent on the plant size. If it is an older institution, security is not just violence. Then we don't hear about people down in Manchester falling off because the railing collapsed. We have some of our school over 100 years. They must then be considered for that safety. If they're in difficult, violent communities, then they must get a greater contribution. The probability becomes greater. It don't matter if it is a KC downtown. But as it relates to KC versus a school that is in a less difficult community, they should get more. Yes. So therefore, it's not a simple matter, oh, KC rich and Papine poor. They should get more. Then we move to socialization. We have to look at the school and the alternatives. For example, Arden High have over 15, I think it's 20 clubs and society. From Spanish club right back. There are some other schools that barely enter Manning Cup, have nothing. What should be the consideration? And equally, what are the alternative socialization options that this community offers? Yes. We have some people that is in Phoenix Football Club while they're playing Manning Cup. They have an alternative to the school. Senator Golin, what are the alternatives to the ones at Donald Quarry? What are the alternatives to the ones at Denham Town? KC might have alternative because our parents can afford different things. But I'm saying if there's no alternative, there should be a consideration. So we can pay for that. What do I hear in the Ministry of Security all the time? Unattached youth, unattached youth. Why are we not doing more to attach them? We are doing... we will come to that. Stakeholder satisfaction. Is the parent satisfied? Is the teacher satisfied? Is the student satisfied? And how do we move to that? Another thing we must consider is nutrition. Yes. Now, it's been a very difficult time for farmers. The climate change and the heat and the drought and I'm in the farming business. But I still thank God for the experience because I've learned quickly that animals, of which we are human beings, are that. Don't want nobody say me I call them picnic goat or fowl or whatever. But animals have two functions in the main. It is sustenance and performance. The animal's first duty is to survive. And whenever it has a lack of nutrition, it shifts from performance to sustenance. If a goat don't have proper nutrition, he aborts the baby, or she aborts the baby. If you don't have proper nutrition, she stops producing milk. Those two things are for the farmer performance. If a fowl don't get enough feed, stop lay. Him shift to survival. So when our children don't have satisfactory nutrition, they are stuck in survival, in sustenance. This education activity is performance. How can a child who haven't ate? I went to a school downtown. Sometimes I don't want to embarrass the schools by calling their names, to teach some inner city mathematics. And at 10 o'clock on a Monday, this girl had her head on the decks. I said, what happened to you? Sir, me head hurt me. Me have gas. And every child there, the other 20 had, knew the solution, drink a soda. In their minds. All that do is to relieve the tension on her stomach, but no nutrition. Let me give you what is being out there. In November 2022, the principals called for the doubling of the part contribution. They were saying to students that not only can you not get the 3 days a week, but for now the money done, we can give you no more. That's what was happening. The research says between 25% and 33% of school-age population in Jamaica arrives at school hungry or without having eaten anything on a given school day. This is Fox, Garden and Strachan 2017. Research says that between 25 and 33%, 1 in 3, reach. Don't become hungry. Start the day hungry. Therefore, it's my opinion that we should give all our students 1 meal for the day. For 190 days, 400,000 people, that's about $19 billion. Where are we going to find $19 billion? We're willing to pay 1% more JISTV if that means we're going to feed our children. But if you don't feed them, no matter how the teacher great, no matter how the curriculum improve, no matter what, and there will be some among us especially supportive of the capitalist opinion that, yo, the one them who rich enough to get it and whatever mustn't get it. I know you write the news for a particular radio station, but my lead opinion is Senator calls for proper nutrition in schools. That is my
Proper nutrition of our children.
Now, let us tell you why we call for proper nutrition. The WHO and the FAO have long advocating for the use of school environment to promote healthy eating habits and lifestyle. The appeal to tackle nutritional status through school lies in the fact that schools provide a ready environment for reaching large groups of children and school community. According to the WHO, scientific evidence has long been established that the effectiveness of school-based intervention to change eating behavior and preventing overweight and obesity is important. This is from the government's nutritional policy. So this is not my opinion. That's why I'm not saying only for part program, because I'm saying all our children should be exposed to what is a nutritious diet. That is a requirement being called for by the WHO. Now, let us look quickly at early childhood, and I will be finishing up soon.
Take your time. No, you go easy.
Of the 2,676 early childhood institutions that have applied for registration, it is reported that only 408, or 15.2%, are identified as public institutions fully funded by government. What we have here is that only 15% of our early childhood institutions are government-provided institutions. The need spaces being provided by the Jamaican government lies in contravention of Section 13K of the Charter of Rights, which declares that it is the right of, and I quote, every child who is a citizen of Jamaica to publicly funded tuition in a public education institution at the pre-primary and primary levels. Senator Golden Campbell, I'm going to repeat this for your benefit. Section 13K of the Constitution, this is the Charter of Rights. It says it is the right of every child who is a citizen of Jamaica to publicly funded tuition in a public education institution at the pre-primary and primary level. Our current situation is that the government only has 15%. When the Charter rights say them have a right. Now, how could 15% satisfy that right? We go further. There's a big thing being celebrated called Brain Builders. Brain Builders is supposed to be from 0 to 3-year-old. It has 6,000 spaces, less than 6,000 spaces. The age cohort is 105,000. That means a Brain Builders is less than 6% of the cohort, 0 to 3-year-old. And we have heard it a million times repeated. We are not going to be able to tinker and change to crimson. We have to make dramatic investment. Dramatic investment. And based on that Charter of Rights, Senator Golding, a legal luminary as you are, I have engaged some lawyers, and we are taking to court, seeking a declaration that the government of Jamaica, through its inability to construct adequate pre-primary institutions across the 14 parishes of Jamaica, abrogates, abridges, or infringes the guaranteed constitutional right or rights set out in the provisions of the Constitution, specified in respect to each provision or group of provisions in the Act. We want for the courts to tell us if it is constitutional based on Section 13K, that a child with a right to a government institution is not being robbed of that right if the government at the early stage of 0 to 3 have 6% spaces, and at the second stage of 3 to 6 have 15% of the spaces. Because the JLP has tried so hard for me not to change policy in the Parliament, then I have to go to the courts to change that policy. But we are going to ask for an opinion, a declaration, so that, sorry?
Continue presentation.
Yeah, I can't answer for 1962.
Exactly.
I can't, I wasn't even born. But I must say, a lot of these things I'm now being exposed to over time. I'm sure you have learned some new things since you have come in. Some things that you assumed not to be so, you have found to be so. But also because the government has always been at a contradiction to the Constitution, I've learned how to challenge that. And so, therefore, having learned that, I'm just trying a new strategy. But what is clear is that the government keeps failing the materiality test of policy making. The materiality test suggests that more persons should benefit from government intervention and not just the PR activity to say we have done. 6% is not satisfactory for Brain Builders to be such a big situation. The other thing is the 7-year secondary experience. Now, what is a 7-year secondary experience? The 7-year secondary experience have simply extended, Senator Gale, the continuum of education to, at the end, you go to 6th form. We all go to 6th form, is the new statement. But we are now not changing the fact that every school can have the same 7-year experience. There's no way, because every school don't have the same situation, Senator Samuda. The 7-year secondary experience should be segmented in a way that different schools and different principals can have some autonomy over what would be our 7-year experience. For example, there may be a need within the 7-year experience for a remedial 7th grade. You spent 2 years in 7th grade because you came to school without the ability. You weren't ready for 7th grade.
Well, Pep said it.
Pep is saying it. We have people in 7th grade, going to 8th grade, going to 9th grade, cannot read.
Yeah.
Doing 13 subjects because 7th grade syllabus is the 13, exposure to all. You should be able, within that 7-year experience, to do a double 7th grade, a remedial 7th grade. Instead, you will just go through and then you go to 6th form. Within that 7-year experience, you might need some people to do a remedial 9th grade. People at Calabar was being expelled for not being able to keep up academically. He was in the top 12% at the age of 12, top 20% of the society. But by 9th grade, he might need greater intervention because puberty has taken him in a difficult way, because parental guidance might not be there, because he's exposed to ganja and all of these things, because let us not underestimate what our children are facing. So you might need that intervention of socialization at the 9th grade. Repeat and make we intervene on that level, because it's not a capacity situation. It's not a bad start situation. It's a circumstantial situation. What I agree with, however, is the vocational pathway. But the vocational pathway, in my opinion, isn't 6th form. It should start from 10th grade, that I choose that direction. And it's not, no, I have failed academics, so now me I got to do vocation. Because none of who in academics don't rich. Like who have done their vocations. I wonder if you know, I have a level 1 in a steel bending. I can build matting. I went to Hart, you know. No. When I was MP, I carry my youth, them go Hart, and I go to. I can make matting, I can make stirrup, I can make column, I can make stiffener. They don't know these things, you know. Only me and you understand these things. You understand? Senator Webby, hand soft, you don't know about these. You don't know. You can't make a stirrup. You understand? But I am telling you that we should not tell our children and our parents that vocation is second to, and therefore you go when you fail. We want a vocational pathway, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, 13th grade. When you finish, you're at level 4 and just go to level 5. And anyway, listen, Australia look them right now. Canada is looking for trained people right now. The United States is looking for trained people right now. I say, and we too are look people too. But I also have so much confidence in the senator that I know, yes, we might have a carry over when we are over there. Don't switch over when we come over. You just stay. The rest don't can come over. You know? Senator Samuda, we talk over drinks if you want to stay. But what we're saying is this. The vocational pathway could be designed that a student leaves high school with a level 4 certification and then choose to do level 5 so that the hearts that are being overcrowded know, because they're going from 1, or it's 2 it start now, I hear it start at 2. But the schools could do that vocational pathway and not ask for the kids to come last before. The other thing is that we have now proposed 6 STEM schools, which is really extending the negativity of our education system, because all it means is the 6 champions. It's 6 schools that the brightest will attend. And maximum the school is going to be 1,000 people, so that's 6,000 out of a cohort of 200,000 from 1st form to 6th form. I put it to you that maybe we should revisit that and do 6 GC Foster type STEM schools. You see, the GC Foster model has worked because every nook and cranny have a trained coach now. You go to primary champs, they have trained coaches. Because GC Foster turn out so much coach that the big schools can't take all, so they go all over now. If we want to take this STEM thing serious, I tell you that in a 5-year course, I can take who don't pass maths, take 2 years for teaching maths, take 3 years for teach him how to teach maths, and send him out. If we use the GC Foster model, we can improve STEM education much more by training the trainers than training 6,000 people of special performance in our area. And those 6 schools would definitely need boarding. Because if you put 6 schools and don't put boarding, then you're only putting it for those who are in proximity to the schools. So how is it going to be? It can't be. So I'm saying, why are we ignoring what GC Foster have achieved? Not only in track and field, but almost every area. So therefore, I'm proposing that we do that. Wrapping up, I'm proposing that we can have, maybe 45 or 50 there. The Patterson report had 365. I took the time. So I'm taking the time to tell them about it. I don't agree with all things, some of these things, but they speak to guidance, they speak to violence, they speak to indiscipline. That can't be moving to crimson without talking about this is happening in the schools, the indiscipline. You don't read and look on the newspaper and look on the TV. Somebody stepped on a clerks and was hospitalized by being beaten by the individual whose clerks it was. We don't see a death at Kingston Technical because 2 children were fighting. We don't hear the constant complaints of indiscipline within our society, but coming out of our children in our schools. And violence. What we have? 1 guidance counselor to 700, 800 students. What we have? 1 dean of discipline to 1,000 students. If we look at the form teacher model and reimagine it by making it no longer be a ragging for the new teacher, but to train the form teacher in guidance, levels of guidance, not equivalent to the guidance counselor, but in understanding and identifying certain things, we would have dramatically increased adult to children ratio in socialization and guidance. Every class of 40 have a form teacher. If we change that from being ragging to senior teacher level with a little bit more pay and you have to go through this training, how could we support our guidance unit to have the guidance counselor, the 40 form teachers, that is 7 grades times 5, that's 35 form teachers, and the dean of discipline working together to re-socialize our children? Because we have to do that. They are being exposed to constant negativity with no counter-argument. They are being told that a scammer make more than a university graduate, and that's a lie. The best scammer might make more than the worst graduate, but the average university graduate is making way more. If scamming was so lucrative, how come $2 million car is a car of choice? We then call it Crown, or I want to show them Senator Webby car. In fact, I want to show them Senator Webby plane. We need to get that counter-arguments. We need to say, yeah, there are a few who are asleep. Oh, helicopter. Helicopter? You know, plane. If you buy a plane, whole heap of mackerel have to say, buy a plane. But I want to show them a car at least. I want to show them Senator Fitzgerald-Benz. Talk the truth now. Because the kids at 11 are only seeing the negative assumption that education does nothing, that there's sufferation surrounding it. It's undesirable. We need the counter-arguments of people making $1 million a month, $2 million a month in real jobs, having gone to university. But we need that guidance counselor, that dean of the Department of Socialization, by rethinking how we treat form teachers to make them be a supporting staff to socialization and guidance. We need a department of volunteerism so that we can coordinate well-thinking Jamaicans. Yes. So that we can then do the Big Brother program. I don't know how we do a Big Brother program now. We have to go find the youth them, and we have to go find the people, and then we can't bother. A department of volunteerism would have coordinated what you ladies were talking about, a Big Sister program. So that we can actually take on some of these children and show them what life is, what man is. You know how much of them has never been exposed to a man? Real man. They grew up with granny and auntie and Riri as a boy. And when him go to school, his teacher is all girls again, women. He has no example to follow. A lot of what I have learned, nobody told me. I watched Senator Graham. I watched my father. and then I take it on. I never even know sometimes when I took it on. We need that. No, he has crossed over to that side. I propose that we consider a mandatory uniform corps for 7th grade and 8th grade. The cadets, the girls' guides, that every 7th grader and 8th grader must participate. But then we have to go to SDF and SDC and get some money so that the schools can afford. But discipline needs to be infused when we have them captured at 7-year-old, so that we don't have people who think it is acceptable to shoot up a car with people they don't know, who don't think it's acceptable for drink and forget, kill and collect, smoke and forget, selling murder. We can't have these problems and tinkering on the outskirts. We need that situation so that we can move forward. We need to take $5 billion a year over the next 2 years from heart and build out labs within our vocational labs within our secondary schools. Yes. If we take $5 billion, we can give 100 schools $50 million to build out lab clusters in tourism services, in mechanics, in body thing, to build out, and then in the evenings, use it as heart centers. One of the least efficient used investment in this country is schools. Billions of dollars spent to build them, and 3 o'clock it empty. Saturday it empty. Sunday it empty. If Heart builds out labs in these schools that are by design in proximity to communities, then the school get to use it, and then in the evening, the community, you can look at the stats model, St. Andrew Technical. They have school and then they have evening school. And the community gentlemen are all going to evening school. Imagine if you had 162 secondary schools that had proper labs, clusters of 4 or 3 offerings, and the community could go to any of that 162. Of the 15 billion that Heart have, give me 5 for 2 years.
On the way to Crimson.
And that will carry us on the way to Crimson. 50 million per school would do a wonderful job. And last. No, second to last. 49. If education is to be efficient, we must consider boarding.
Yes.
Boarding.
Yes.
Other than that, every school has to offer everything.
Great Westwood High School.
Let me explain something. There are classes as we speak for accounts with 10 students, because that's all the school have to do accounts. And every school have to have accounts. Had we had a system that I want to go to a business school and boarding exists, the efficiency of 1 to 40 would have been achieved instead of 1 to 10. There are places, especially some of our undeveloped schools, where you can't get to do chemistry because there's not enough. It's 3 or 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah,
not enough. Or you get a teacher to teach them at the same pay. If we don't have boarding, we can't separate some of these children from the community. That is a negative influence. If we don't have boarding, we cannot manufacture or invest properly in excellence, schools of excellence, in the arts or schools of excellence in sports, or schools of excellence in science, or schools of excellence in technology, because our schools were not designed for its output. It was designed for its proximity, location. We have schools like Jago, St. Jago, with children going to classes under the tree. And we have schools all the way in the country where short of picnic. That's inefficiency created by the lack of boarding. But every year we have all these accidents because the distance of travel for some, and the cost base and the distance of travel. There's a reason why we have 800 and odd primary schools and 160 something secondary schools. Because the primary schools had to be almost in walking distance. The secondary schools, however, were not. With bad roads, some taxi don't go to some community. With distance from the school because communities. Look on Westphalia up in the hills of St. Andrew. Westphalia. You don't even know the community. It's up in Mavis Bank and you go way up in a hill. Some of those children are being placed at Donald Quarry. They have to come down to Mavis Bank, then take a bus come to Papine, then take a bus go downtown, then take a bus from downtown to Harborview. Wow. That is what is happening. I was not a supporter of the train system till the People's National Party and Mark Golding gave me the opportunity to go down into Linstead. There are so many children coming into Kingston from Linstead on the train so that they can go to Jago and KC and St. Hughes. On the train, and it's one trip. If you miss that, it's salt. The buses are taking 5 children only because those 5 is a lower fee. That is what our children are going through. I never knew it still exists. Because when we used to take bus before JUTC, and you run, go, a man licking your chest, no schoolers. You wouldn't remember that. You didn't have the Benz same time, eh? No, you never abandoned no schoolers time. Then to my hope and dream for the society. 1 degree per household. It is my dream that we take on as a commitment 1 degree per household. I'm saying that as an experience. The 1st degree in our household. Ransford Bryan. 1st degree. And he guided and encouraged and funded. How much are we now? 38? In my age group. And the ones after has also been funded. 2 to 6 coming, save up your money. All of them. I used to go to maths extra class funded by. But that opportunity, that understanding of how to approach study. When I lived with Senator Bryan, and I lock off the light at 2, he comes out with a big law book. Turn on back the light, never start sleeping at light, he used to watch light. So I'll know me sleeping at light. But he knew how to succeed in education. That evidence is the 1 degree per household. Why Barbados have it? There's something going on the internet. The lady said she wants her spot that them put on for her at the university, her child. 1 degree per household will change some shopping to wholesale. Will change some hustle into business. That's about 4,000 people per year. People like to say, what's the population like? More of us don't pay more tax than them. Right? What's the population in Jamaica who pay more tax because enough away? I can tell you that had I not had a graduation university, the taxes I would have paid would have been less than what. In fact, I would have paid no tax car 1.5. Yes, I like it. Yes, I like it. 1.5. That's why we're going 3. How we like it. But I'm saying that when you look, you're distracting me now. Time will come. And to achieve this 1 degree, I hope it remains a commitment of the People's National Party for the first in every family to receive a scholarship if they're the first to matriculate to the university. Yes. Too much children with 10 subjects hustling at a wholesale because they can't afford university. Deregistration, I locked down the campus for deregistration. That shows that I'm not biased. I will lock it down again.
That's right.
Under JLP for deregistration. 1 degree per household by making it free for the first in the family will help to move us from crisis to crimson in our lifetime. That's right. Thank you, Mr. President.
That's right, my brother. Well done. That's right. That's what you call a coordination. Good job, DC.
You know, Senator, 1 minute, Senator Samuda. You know that I really appreciate your presentation because it presents a vision, and I appreciate it. However, No, it's an excellent vision. And I shared a lot of things that he says, but he failed to recognize that in order to achieve it, you have to have a viable economy. And everything that you spoke about demands that the country's economy grows, and that's what this government is doing. No, I don't, Mr. Samoud, I don't finish yet, because I can't respond to him because Senator Morris is not here to remind me that I can't. The other thing that I thought you neglected to deal with too is the role of the teachers. The role of the teachers, because you're an advocate for increased remuneration for teachers and better conditions for them, but you don't say that some of the problems we have now result from the failure of the teachers to live up to their expectation. No, man, I would have given my next 15 minutes to talk about that. Senator Samuda. Anyway, thank you very much, Senator Crawford. I enjoyed it. And I think that most of the members on the other side did too, but they can't say it. Thank you, Senator Crawford. Senator Samuda. Yes, Senator Minister Hill.
Today is our intention to continue the State of the Nation debate with a contribution. We've done that. Mr. President, I now ask that a State of the Nation debate be suspended, having listened so well to Senator Crawford. Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Members would have heard the question. Those in favor? Senator Samuda.
Mr. President, I rise to provide an update to this Honourable Senate on some matters related to the issue of water. In the last 12 months, Jamaica has suffered the effects of significant reductions in its average rainfall. This is a result of both our changing climate and the El Niño phenomenon. Members of the Senate should recall statements made on the drought earlier this year, both in February and indeed in August, which outlined the government's response. However, I think it's important, Mr. President, to remind members of how severe our drought.
Sorry, Senator Samuda. I'm just trying to clarify something here. 1 minute. Just give me a minute.
Speaking on the motion.
Minister, are you giving a statement?
I'm speaking on the motion, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed to know. Yes, thank you, Senator Samuda. Sure. That's what I needed to know. I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
No problem, Mr. President. I think it's important, Mr. President, to remind colleagues of how severe our drought has been since October 2022. In October 2022 to March 2023, Jamaica received cumulatively the lowest rainfall ever for this period since records have been kept. In February 2023, Kingston and St. Andrew received only 8% of its 30-year average rainfall. Over the last 12 months, October 2022 to September 2023, every month except June would have seen less rainfall than the previous year and less than the 30-year average. As I've said in the past, colleagues should recall that our data collection systems for the Met Service are manual, so I'm not able yet to give you the October 2023 results. However, despite afternoon showers, we have not seen the sort of rainfall that we would normally see, and we will update on that in short order. To make matters worse, Mr. President, in July and August, both months broke temperature records, recording the highest average temperatures ever recorded for July and August. Mr. President, it is important that the public be aware of the strategic work being done by the government to address the issue of water availability and supply in a comprehensive manner. We are approaching this critical issue in a cohesive manner, bringing all MDAs together through the Integrated Water Resource Management Council, a council of cabinet. Madam Speaker, Mr. President, even as we speak on the work being done, predict it. I do. Mr. President, some things are inevitable. Even as we speak on the work being done in the water portfolio, we have to note the challenges we face in ensuring sustainable water is made available to all Jamaicans. One is perennial drought made worse by climate change. Two is our aging infrastructure, and three is the inadequacy of that infrastructure. Mr. President, today we are taking two major steps. Rather, last week we took two major steps in the pursuit of our articulated water goals, in the tabling of the National Water Resources Master Plan for Jamaica and the tabling of the Rainwater Harvesting Planning Guidelines. Firstly, Mr. President, the National Water Resources Master Plan for Jamaica is an assessment of Jamaica's water resources and demand based on the period 2016 to 2019, as mandated by Section 16 of the Water Resources Act. It is an update both of the completed 1990 and draft 2005 plans, and takes into account the various changes in available data, monitoring techniques, demography, economic activity, and the impacts of climate change. Various changes, Mr. President, in the water resources and the environment which have occurred since these previous plans include changes in the legislative and institutional framework of the water sector, improved estimates of water resources with additional years of hydrological data, and advances in technology that allow for better analyses, impacts of climate change on projected water and demand availability, changes in demographic growth, distribution, industrial, and agricultural land usages, and the subsequent changes in water demand for all sectors. As mandated by Section 16 of the Water Resources Act, the National Water Resources Master Plan will provide objectives for developing Jamaica's water resources, an inventory of Jamaica's available water quantity, quality usage, and activities impacted by water usage, as well as the guidance on water quality objectives. Additionally, it allows the government of Jamaica to evaluate methods to meet water quality and quantity objectives. Mr. President, the plan will also enable the efficient planning and allocation of resources within the water sector, as it provides information related to the physical settling of Jamaica, resource assessment, the demand assessment, the water resources monitoring. Mr. President, this is a major step in us planning for our water resources. Mr. President, last week we also tabled the water harvesting planning guidelines. This will help us with improved water storage, usage, efficiency, and conservation, which are imperative to reduce demand on our existing sources and infrastructure, reduce costs, reduce vulnerability to drought and the adverse effects of climate change. While there are some limited conditions and requirements associated with the subdivision and building approvals process for domestic water security, there are no specific requirements in law for the catchment of rainwater in Jamaica. Some municipalities are, however, already recommending rainwater harvesting. However, this step is now us making national recommendations for the new residential, commercial, institutional, including schools, industrial, and office buildings to be constructed with rainwater harvesting capabilities to augment potable and non-potable water supply. Mr. President, as Jamaica is increasingly experiencing the effects of climate change, which is threatening the availability of potable water from single spring or river sources to meet existing and future demands, rainwater harvesting is a cost-effective solution for water shortages. It is to be noted that Section 61A of the Building Act 2018 states that the Minister may, in relation to building or building work, or any category of buildings or building work, make regulations for water harvesting, including requiring provisions to be made for the storage of rainwater runoff. The Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development is in the process of finalizing regulations under the Building Act 2018, which will include provisions for rainwater harvesting. These guidelines will provide the basis for the nationalization of those regulations. Mr. President, the government has implemented a number of rainwater harvesting projects through varying ministries and agencies, such as the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, the Ministry of Education and Youth, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, the Rural Water Supply Limited, and the Rural Agricultural Development Authority as well, Mr. President. Mr. President, you will recall earlier in the year at the budget presentation made by the Prime Minister, he made the announcement that the Jamaican government will procure over the next 3 years 50,000 black tanks to be distributed across Jamaica for water resilience at the household level. In due time. In due time. Mr. President, I was happy to hear the announcement last week, Tuesday, from the Prime Minister that the pilot of the Rural Water Household Resilience Program was ready to commence. He announced that it would start Monday, and I'm happy to report that it has indeed started. Firstly, why a pilot? Mr. President, no sideshows. Ultimately, the government has never not had challenges with the distribution of such resources. As such, we will work through all teething pains with a small number first of 3,400-gallon tanks to make sure the distribution process is equitable, efficient, and provides transparency to the public by way of how persons would have been selected. So, to note, 3,400-gallon tanks, Mr. President. This has benefited from IDB grant funding of 60 million Jamaican dollars to purchase the tanks. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, through the Rural Water Agency, will provide funding of 250 million Jamaican dollars to facilitate the coordination of the project and the deployment of the water harvesting systems and tanks. In essence, we will install these tanks along with the accompanying rainwater systems for 3,000 households in Jamaica. The method of selection, Mr. President, used the data from the Met Services and was also scrutinized by the IDB, approving the use of grant funds for the purchase of these tanks. The constituencies which will participate in the pilot program are predominantly in the eastern part of the country. And colleagues would recall from all of the drought updates throughout the courses of the year, it is the eastern part of the country that suffered disproportionately. As you would recall, even our rain patterns, as we've presented in the past, have shifted from east to west. And I know Senator Crawford on his farm is already seeing the impacts of that in St. Mary. The constituencies which will participate in the pilot program are predominantly from the eastern part of the country and include East and West Rural St. Andrew, East and Western St. Thomas, East and West Portland, St. Mary constituencies by way of Southeast, Central, and Western St. Mary, and the southern belt of St. Anne, including Southeast and Southwest St. Anne, and the hilly northern belt of Clarendon, including North, North Central, and Northwest Clarendon. The data was taken from Met Services, and this is the areas that would have had the least rainfall. It is important to note, Mr. President, that these tanks will be distributed in areas which are either outside of the utility footprint of the NWC or in an area where that utility footprint, by way of its infrastructure, is significantly degraded and unable to provide predictable supply. Members of Parliament in these constituencies have submitted 200 names each for the recipients of, 230 names, each for the recipients of these tanks. Mr. President, the teams at Rural Water and the Social Review Committee will commence the rollout of these household rainwater harvesting systems and tanks, or rather have commenced. The same oversight process that is underway for the social housing program will be used in assessing the recommendations from MPs to ensure that it is constituents most in need who get the benefit that the government will provide. Mr. President, each location that a tank is installed will be mapped and geotagged to ensure accountability, but also to ensure we start the process of properly assessing the true national storage capacity for water. Another important element that colleagues should consider, and for anyone who's been in politics for longer than a year knows the issues associated with trucking of water. You know the constant complaints of equity in the process, and you know the inefficiency that exists in that space. Mr. President, this assessment of national storage capacity will allow us to properly plan routes for trucking based on what the assessed storage capacity is in a community. Another important element of the project is a training component. Each member of parliament has identified 10 young persons who will be trained to do these installations by the Heart NSTA, Trust NSTA, and will receive a stipend for the work during the project. The project is a direct investment, Mr. President, in the households which are at the lower end of the economic ladder and are living with water insecurity. It is an investment, Mr. President, in rural communities. Once this pilot is complete in December, we will move to expanding the program nationally to include all rural constituencies. It is
Mr. President, the time being 1:20, might the Senate sit beyond 1:30 to complete the business of the day?
Members should have heard the question. Those in favor? Thank you, Senator Samuda.
Mr. President, the Water Resources Master Plan is guiding our investment decisions. The rainwater harvesting guidelines is guiding our planning decisions. But it is important to note, Mr. President, that the government is investing at an unprecedented rate. We understand and feel the frustrations that we all feel when there have to be water restrictions. It is why we are investing in 21 major projects this year and 44 minor water systems being done by the NWC. I wish to remind colleagues that we are pursuing several major projects, including the Greater Mandeville Water Supply, the Rio Cobre Water Treatment Plant, which will bring an end to the supply issues in the corporate area in Portmore, the Essex Valley Immigration Scheme, the Pedro Plains Irrigation Scheme, the National Non-Revenue Water Project, which is out to tender now, and the replacement of the major supply lines in Western Jamaica. Mr. President, the tabling of the new Water Resources Master Plan, particularly in the context of climate change, represents a monumental step forward towards sustainable environmental stewardship. This comprehensive plan acknowledges the critical intersection of water management and climate resilience and provides a strategic blueprint to navigate the challenges posed by a changing climate. The initiatives that have been announced today and previously not only address immediate water security concerns, but also lay a robust foundation for long-term climate adaptation. Mr. President, the government is committed to safeguarding and sustainable management of one of our most vital resources. By outlining the strategies for sustainable resource allocation, conservation, and equitable distribution, the plan lays the groundwork for a resilient and adaptive water infrastructure. This in turn catalyzes economic growth and development and ensures a stable, reliable water supply for agriculture, industry, and urban centers. One of the focuses of our investment plan, Mr. President, is indeed our schools. This government will not allow further learning loss on the basis of water shortage. We are building out the storage capacity in all of our schools. Mr. President, I sympathize with my colleague across the aisle. Because there's only one way he's crossing the aisle, and that is crossing. But, indeed. But, Mr. President, no, it's not. And this is an ambitious plan. Mr. President, the master plan serves as the pivotal link between environmental sustainability, economic dynamism, and overall societal advancement, and is in line with our articulated goals of Vision 2030 and our and the fact that we are signatories to the UN SDGs as it relates specifically to SDG 6. Mr. President, I invite contributions on the motion, and we'll ask that it's approved post those contributions. Or a contribution. There you go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Samuda. Senator Fraser, being some seat other than your own, I recognize you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Minister Samuda for that fairly detailed presentation or synopsis of the master plan, which is quite involved document. And I must say that us on this side, we really support the continuation of the master plan. It is in fact not the very first master plan that has been done in terms of water. I believe at least 2 have been done in the past, but we are very happy that this master plan is done, particularly in light of climate change and the effects of climate change, and it does give consideration to water safety and water security, within the context of climate change, and that cannot be underscored. Minister, I note the concern, and you have said this at least the 3 times that you have spoken about water. You have mentioned the low rainfall within the eastern parishes, and I think all of us, Kingston and Central, can understand that. But and I'll come to that in a little bit, note the work relating to the black tanks. I wondered, however, because St. Elizabeth is our breadbasket parish, and there is no doubt of the challenges within Manchester, St. Elizabeth, in terms of water. And I wondered whether, and I hear the basis upon which the constituencies were selected for the black tank, but certainly I want to just put a plug in for St. Elizabeth, given the critical role it plays in terms of our food security. I know, and I'm not the only one, because just yesterday I was speaking to somebody from St. Elizabeth who was sharing with me the challenge that they're having in terms of their own agricultural products. I go into the supermarket now and I simply can't find vegetables. I mean, I can't find vegetables, and it is a product of the drought we've had, but also believe that it could have been cushioned with proper irrigation. So while I am not against the selection of eastern parishes for the black tank distribution, certainly I'd want to know the situation in St. Elizabeth and the plan, the immediate plan, not the major project that has been outlined, but certainly the immediate plan to deal with that. And Minister, the black tank, again, you know, I understand the importance of it, but I want to put in a plug because we do have a history of how black tank distribution has been dealt with in the past. And I listened from your presentation where you mentioned the basis upon which it is being done and the constituencies that have been chosen for the selection. I am very happy that there's going to be a mapping and a geotagging of these black tanks. And I am also heartened that you have mentioned the transportation, because you have the tank, but you need to get water in them. So I'm very happy that within the contemplation, consideration was given to how we're going to truck water to these areas that will be benefiting from the black tanks. But I also want to say that in addition to the black tanks and the plan for immediate trucking, that the long-term strategy has to be getting water in the pipes, because that is where we need to go. And as I said, that will be in the medium to long-term strategy. I wondered, Minister, if you are able to share with us 84% of our water is underground, and know with the impact of drought and climate change, I'm not sure whether that figure is still the same. I haven't seen an updated figure, I don't know, but if you could share with us whether the situation has changed significantly in light of our drought condition and climate change. But that being said, Minister, we on this side support the master plan. We have absolutely no challenge, and we believe that it is one of the things that must be done. Okay, thank you, Minister of Education, who reminded me about the importance of our schools getting water. And I am hoping, Minister, that within Senator Gale, within the distribution of these black tanks, that some of them will be given not just to households but to schools to ensure that they will have potable water. And as you said, that education will not be impacted because of the lack of water. And that being said, Minister, on this side, we support the master plan. We believe that it is something that is required. And as I said, I really want to thank not so much the government, but I want to thank the technical persons because they have spent considerable time drafting this master plan. I attended a meeting where they were discussing the master plan, and I was very impressed with the level of knowledge and information that the technical team shared. And I want to applaud the Water Resources Authority and the team that continues to lead this. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator Fraser-Binns. Senator Minister Samuda.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for that contribution, Senator Fraser-Binns. Just in response to a few matters, I do wish to thank the Prime Minister for his leadership and insisting that this water resources master plan was done. But I also do extend my thanks to the technical team that would have worked on it. I think important to also thank the advisory committee because the master plan also benefited from the review of sector experts, including mining and lands and agricultural experts, etc. Indeed. The long-term distribution network expansion is absolutely critical to us achieving Vision 2030. Bringing that plan to life is not possible without ensuring that 100% of Jamaicans have access to potable water. And we are further today than we were last year, and we are certainly further today than where we were in 2015. The expansion of our water networks over the last year has significantly improved the potable access to water of in excess of 250,000 Jamaicans that would have moved to either from not having water or having very unreliable water to having reliable access in their pipes, Mr. President. Sorry? I suspect I may have had a role. But additionally, Mr. President, the close to $7 billion of works which are underway now represent improvement of water resilience and access for a further 150,000 Jamaicans. So for instance, in St. Elizabeth, in the community of Pepper, where we generally extract the water for Manchester, we will connect the community of Pepper, where I believe approximately 4,000 persons will have reliable potable water for the first time in the life of that community within the next 3 weeks. 3 weeks the work should be completed.
3 weeks.
Yes, it will be one of my Thursday commissionings very soon. But for the first time, on touring that facility, I insisted that there was no way we could reasonably look the people in the eye and extract the water to send to another parish from their backyard and them not have water. It was wrong, it's a wrong that has been corrected, and the community of Pepper will benefit. But to the broader point of water security in St. Elizabeth for our breadbasket, we are underway with an investment of $50 million in the Essex Valley irrigation scheme as supported by the British government. One of the largest investments in our irrigation in this country's history. Now, important to note, we expect to, we have started, we're doing the cadastral mapping now for the Pedro Plains irrigation system. And as a country, we really have to take a serious look at ourselves because this project was announced by Michael Manley in 1973. And it is Andrew Holness in 2023, that is executing it. 50 years. A country cannot continue to talk about investments for 50 years and not make those investments. So we're doing the technical work now. We're doing the land acquisition. We're doing the mapping. We're doing the training of those who will work on the construction phase of the Pedro Plains irrigation system. And Senator Fraser-Binns, that will represent in excess of $200 million, the single largest investment in irrigation in this country's history. Manchester Mr. President, and I'm... Mr. President, Mr. President, there is a publicly known project dubbed the Greater Mandeville Water System. We are, I believe, 3 years into a 4-year planned investment which will exceed 4 billion Jamaican dollars in putting water in Mandeville and its environs. For anyone who has a family member, a friend, or has visited Mandeville knows of the water challenges that that community and the environs and the adjoining communities have had. Mr. President, that plan deals with the water source, which is the expansion of the pepper wells. It deals with the installation of brand new distribution mains and will significantly increase the storage capacity for water in Manchester. Mr. President, I am satisfied that at the end of the calendar year for 2024, this government, which will still be in power, will be able to say that we have fixed the water challenges for the people of Mandeville. It is part of the reason why Senator Bunting, and I hate to say this in his absence, is not there. However, Mr. President, it is indeed, and I think Senator Fraser Binns on the commitment of the technical staff in Water Resources Authority is the appropriate place to complete my response. The work of the men and women in the water sector, certainly from my period, and I believe Senator Hill will look back at his period fondly as well. The work that the men and women of the water sector, through the Water Resources Authority, through NWC, through Rural Water Limited, through the municipal water systems, these men and women, Mr. President, provide yeoman service through underinvestment, through drought, and through, in many cases, trying circumstances. And we thank them for their commitment and their investment of their time and, in many ways, their lives into this sector to ensure Jamaicans have potable water. I ask, Mr. President, that the motion be approved.
Thank you very much. Members would have heard the question from Minister Samuda, who I hear being referred to as the water don. I'm not sure if it's something that he's prepared to embrace. Those in favor? Against? Minister Hill?
Mr. President, I rise to note that the motion for adjournment, but I advise that Senators Morris Dixon and Longmore will speak on matters.
And Senator Scott Motley, I believe.
And Senator Scott Motley will speak on matters of national concern.
Senator Scott Motley, it was just yourself or you and somebody else? Yourself and Damian? Okay, thank you. Senator Dixon? Thank you, Senator Hill.
Mr. President, I rise on the motion for adjournment to raise some matters which are of grave national concern. Mr. President, as I rise, it's with the heaviest of hearts and a shared sense of disbelief as our national community reels from another tragedy that is beyond comprehension. Colleague Senator Sinclair referenced these tragic events in his earlier presentation. A few days ago, in the peaceful twilight that should have marked the end of another day, a horrific act of violence ripped through the fabric of our society in the community of Salt Spring and tore away the lives of 3 of our own. 2 young boys whose lives were just beginning to unfold, and a man who appears to have been the target. These young boys, cherished students of Chetwood Memorial Primary School, were on their journey home from school, a place where they were meant to be safe, nurtured, and encouraged to dream big dreams. Their innocence and potential were extinguished by a cruelty that we as a community and a society cannot and must not tolerate. To the family who have lost their loved ones, we extend our deepest and our most heartfelt condolences. No words can suffice to heal the wound of losing a child, a family member, in such a heartless act. Our thoughts, our prayers, and our unwavering support are with the family at this time of unimaginable sorrow. How do we as a people even begin to make sense of this event? This act was no random occurrence. It was not an act of nature. The deaths of 7-year-old Justin Perry and 9-year-old schoolmate Nakove Smith can only be described as deliberate acts, a deliberate act to incite fear and terror far beyond the geographic proximity of the action. Mr. President, we must condemn in the strongest terms the perpetrators of this heinous crime of terror. Violence, much less of this indiscriminate kind, has no place in our society. And it is especially abhorrent when it claims the lives of the most innocent among us. These are young Jamaicans, our future, among the most vulnerable. Mr. President, these seeds of terror must not be allowed to grow and cover our country and its people in a forest of darkness, the likes of which no living Jamaican has experienced. Terrorism in all its heinous forms is a vile assault on humanity itself. These perpetrators target innocent lives indiscriminately, showing no mercy, no compassion. Mr. President, we have seen the carnage it leaves in its wake, the shattered families, the community scarred by its brutality. We must not, and we cannot let this continue. In the face of this darkness, we must stand united as a beacon of light, hope, and resilience. We must not let terrorism define us or determine our destiny. We are a nation of potential, bound by our shared humanity and our common values of peace, justice, and freedom. And it is precisely those values that these individuals seek to undermine. I know that some have concerns over the use of this nomenclature of terror, but we have to call it what it is. Now, Mr. President, if there's any doubt about this new emergence of terror, I would ask you to look at the newspaper today. Security threats forced evacuation at multiple schools, and we heard our esteemed colleague, Senator Crawford, speak to it. And while we were in our sitting, there were many WhatsApps and messages coming in about additional threats happening today in our schools. Our schools, which are places of learning, the cradle of our future, are under attack. They're being attacked by barbaric, unforgivable bomb threats. These acts of terror are not mere disruptions. They are direct attacks on the sanctity of education. They are direct attacks on the well-being of our children. For 2 days, our children and their future have been under attack. Education is the cornerstone of any prosperous society. Our schools are a sacred space where young minds are nurtured, where futures are built, and where dreams take flight. By threatening this sanctity and this sanctuary, these bomb threats do not just instill fear, they rob our students of their fundamental right to learn in a safe and secure environment. I shouldn't have to go home and have my child ask, are there bombs at our school? We shouldn't have to go through that. The impact of these threats extend far beyond the immediate panic they induce. Every false alarm, every evacuation eats into valuable instructional time, disrupting the educational process and potentially hindering the academic progress of our students. And as has been told, they're already behind. This is time that our teachers cannot reclaim, and experiences our students cannot afford to lose. Our children deserve to learn without the shadow of fear looming over them. We all have a role to play in this fight to prevent this future of crime and this crisis of crime. Now, I know I have a role to play. Technology has a role to play. There is a transformative power of technology in reducing crime and making our communities safer. We live in an age where innovation has the potential to revolutionize how we prevent and combat criminal activities, as we can use the technology, as the water boss said, in terms of water. First and foremost, let's consider the impact of surveillance technology. And I remember Senator Crawford talking about he wants more Jamaica Eye. The widespread deployment of security cameras in public spaces and private properties, especially those connected to Jamaica Eye, has proven to be a game changer. These cameras serve as vigilant eyes on the streets, providing valuable evidence and deterrence to criminal activities. As we continue to build out this surveillance network, we must take them to the next level. With the introduction of dedicated teams in our JCF doing data analytics and predictive policing, we have used these new powerful tools to improve their work. Law enforcement agencies will now be able to analyze vast amounts of data to identify patterns, hotspots, and trends in criminal behavior, and we're using that now. So technology is not just a tool, it is a force multiplier in our efforts to reduce crime. Technology is our ally. Embracing and investing in innovative solutions will enable us to build safer, more secure communities for all. Mr. President, I proudly and unequivocally stand in support of the responsible and judicious use of emergency powers as a critical tool in combating crime and terrorism. In the reality of increasingly complex criminal activity and the emergence of terror, the need for swift and decisive action to protect our society has never been greater. Let us not kid ourselves. We must not turn a blind eye. The war for the soul of Jamaica is on. We must decide whether to stand in support of law and order, peace and justice, or to stand complicit to terror, devastation, and lawlessness. Crime is a shadow that looms over our societies, threatening our livelihood. Mr. President, I stand at this time to issue a call to action that transcends political boundaries, philosophical differences, and personal interests, a call for national unity, a partnership. Mr. President, I'm pleased to report that the arrangements governing, and I was asked last week about it, the Crime Monitoring Oversight Committee are currently being reviewed, and a new agreement should be reached soon. The administration remains committed to a consensus on crime. This fight is not a task for one group or one institution. It's a task for all of us, for every citizen, every community, and every sector of society. Let us answer this call for unity, for together we are unstoppable, and together I know we will conquer crime. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Senator Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, while I am not now, nor have I ever been, a believer in the ability of a state of emergency to solve the issues that we have, I will not allow that to deter me from joining in the statement that what has happened is an atrocity and an attack on our society. As I've said before, it shows that education no longer holds the pride of place, and educational institutions and the educational practitioners, including our children, are no longer safe from the negative atrocities that these people are willing to rain upon our society. Indeed, the village should raise the child, and the village should also protect the child, and the village should seek to ensure the child's progress. In recent times, including a drive-by shooting 6 days ago, taking the life of a 6-year-old child, including another 3 persons at the time. This must be one of the greatest fears of every parent who send their child to school and is unaware of what the child could encounter at school and while traversing from school to home. There was a time Jamaicans could feel that this was the safest period within a child's life. The time for which these things are also occurring are in broad daylight, suggesting that they no longer seek the coverage of darkness, that they no longer fear being seen and being known, that not only do they not fear the law nor the Lord, but they don't fear the society from having a negative reaction to a shootout in Half a Tree Square or a shooting at 12 noon. In this case, a shooting at 3 p.m. A child should legitimately be on the road, should legitimately be in pursuit of getting home, and unfortunately was affected so negatively. It is affecting our psyche, it is affecting our productivity, it is affecting our humanity, and by extension, we are at war with those who are willing to be so open, celebratory even, of negative actions such as these. Intentional negative actions such as these. These are the type of people I was referring to when I said we need an enemy of the state law. These are the types of people I was referring to when I said that they're internal terrorists, because their intent in this case is not to seek to be at war with their opposition, is to be at war with our society, our morality, our values, our beliefs. This is so un-Jamaican, it is not funny. And so I joined the call. I joined the call, but I also call upon any individual with information to understand that any of these children could be your children, your brother, your sister. I am calling upon any individual that has any information to prove to the rest of us that we are not too far gone to recover, to give to the police this information so that these persons can be made an example to others who may seek to act in this way, to others that might be having a shootout in a school next, not only en route. They show a willingness that they would go in the school, in the church. They have done that. They have done that initially. Our first hurdle of degradation was they would pursue a person run into the church. In my time, when you reached the church, you were safe till next time. Now they move from pursuing a person who ran into the church to going to the church to commit the crime, and would be willing to pursue an individual running into the school, and with so many gangs in school, go to the school. You may find a 12-year-old being a victim of these negativities. Any Jamaican who is not satisfied with this type of negativity, atrocity, violence, and criminality must stand together to make a social discomfort, a social discomfort that even if not caught, you cannot be comfortable in our space and around us. I accept the call made by the senator from Montego Bay that the accomplished should also be those who facilitate those such as this. That an accomplice don't have to be present at the time, but those willing to hide both the person and the information, those willing to keep scoundrels such as these, should equally pay for their choosing of a side other than justice, other than peace, and other than love. So I join you, my good senator, in the call for immediate action. I join the use of, for the calls for immediate fear, for the treatment of combatants to the state as combatants to the state. And I hope to hear in short order the police report that these individuals have been caught, and then in even shorter order that they have been punished to the full extent of the law. I lend my condolences to the family members, to the friends, to the school, to the extended school, the parents, the PTA, the teachers, who must all be in fear. And I hope that this is not one of those that goes unpunished for the betterment of our society. I join the call, and I hope we will see the results in short order. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Crawford. Senator Longmore, that's your seat up there now, or am I recognizing you from a different seat?
You're recognizing me from a seat not my own,
Okay,
but I'm very comfortable with.
No problem, I'm just
Thank
wanting
you.
to know.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me wipe the smile off my face because there's absolutely nothing to smile about in this presentation. You know, our children, I think we all recognize, I don't think I need to relate the importance of our children in our society. But I'm coming from my professional background of the psyche that was mentioned. And our children have been facing assault in many ways that is very unfortunate for them at their very tender stages to be dealing with. We have natural assaults coming from the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're seeing the effects of that still. We recently had that very awakening sense of a 5.6 magnitude earthquake, and how jarring, literally, that can be, not just to us as adults, but to our children. And now we have unnatural impact on our children's psyche, man-made impact. That is such a waste of time and energy when we could be putting such resources and efforts into preparing for what is natural. Children killed in taxis coming from school. I don't know if you saw when I just left earlier, the bomb threat happened at my children's school. And even though I called and made arrangements, and other members who are here in the Senate, and even though I immediately called and made arrangements for them to be collected, I got up and left when an email came in from my son saying, "Mom, come and get me, it is an emergency." And I went immediately. On the way, dropping him home, "Mom, what happened? What happened?" And it's like the same thing that has happened post the earthquake. And one of the reasons I said, let me rise, is in my capacity, I get a lot of requests in terms of how to help persons deal with this type of impact on the psyche. Dr. Longmore, can you make a presentation here? Can you make a presentation to this group? So I say, I'm going to use this opportunity to say to the nation that disasters come in many forms. You cannot predict it. We can do whatever we can to plan, to prepare, and to pray, but recognize that when we are dealing with our children, we have to be careful with the level of information you expose them to. The truth of the matter is, you have to be age and stage appropriate in how you inform them and how you prepare them of these unknowns that they may have to face. And so I as I always speak of holistic health and wellness, I implore those tenets. But don't hide from the fact that we're living in these times. We must, as individuals, as community, as a family, as society, relay the information that is necessary and provide the necessary tools for our children to be prepared as best they can. Let me speak specifically, Mr. President, to what Senator Dixon rose on in her first opening, which was the murders of children en route in a taxi. And Mr. President, you know, when we first started back this session of the Senate, I rose in that September Friday and I called for the mandatory, I said life sentencing, but I said in my personal purview, death penalty of child murderers. I subsequently got up and I retracted and made the correction that it was not the death penalty that I called for. But I am happy to see, it is sad for me to say I'm happy to see this, that the nation is becoming sensitized to the fact that when it comes to the protection of our children, we need to draw a line and say there is no excuse, there is no possibility for someone who murders a child to see the light of day again. Whatsoever. The level of pain, the level of hurt, we stand and we wonder at times, why do we have violence in our society so much? Behind violence is anger. Behind anger is hurt. And behind hurt, it is usually injustice. And if we see our children being sacrificed in this way, and there is no sense of justice as to the level of damage that was done by the loss of such innocence, our nation is going to be traumatized and scarred. And that is what we are seeing. Senator Crawford, I join your plea. I am almost sure that invariably somebody knows something about these heinous acts. Somebody knows something. Let us act, let us inform, let us relate when it comes to the murders of our children. We cannot continue to say that, oh, this is another one that has been gone. And, oh, this person is going to get a life sentence with the possibility of parole. No. They snuffed out a young life that did not get a chance. They need no chance. So, Mr. President, I will close by relating and repeating. As those who care for our children, individually, in group, and nationally, let us age appropriately and stage appropriately, prepare them for the realities of the world that we're living in, the society that they're living in, unfortunately. Let us act to protect them at all costs, and let us make sure that justice is served in the way that is fitting. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Longmore. Senator Scott Motley.
Mr. President, I want to join with my colleagues and to embrace everything that they have said. Very important statements that have been made. You know, there are times when a particular instance, a story, impacts you more than others. And this murder in Salt Spring was one of those. I mean, you hear about people being killed every day. And as Senator Crawford said, just last week, there was a 6-year-old who was shot in a drive-by shooting. The monument, the wall of mourning, it was actually constructed to hold the names of 2,000 children. And there is no more space left. June 23rd this year, I think it was, the Governor General declared a day, a national day of mourning for children. And when I heard it, I wanted to ask, what kind of society are we that we would need to set aside a day when we mourn children? It is an indictment on us. It is an indictment on the way that we treat our children. It is an indictment on the way that the system functions around children. And it was particularly interesting to hear what Senator Crawford had to say about our educational system and how it does not work for a lot of people. And sometimes we have to look, really, really look, and try to correct some of the injustices in our society to prevent others from happening. This is a stark reminder to us about the cruel nature that has emerged and taken set in our society. And I express my deepest condolences to the families of Tevin Gale, of Nicovis Smith, and of young Justin Perry. And I know how that parent was so careful that morning, Justin's parent, to try and get him to go to school in a safe manner, wanting a particular taxi to take him to school, almost as though there was a kind of premonition, a kind of intuition. But no intuition or premonition prepares you for the reality of losing your child. And losing your child in such an absolutely senseless manner. You know, somebody said to me when I expressed how I felt, that the tide of hearing condolences, they say all you politicians do is get up and express your condolences. And today I want to go a little bit beyond expressing my condolences. I want to call on some of the women to make a difference in this fight against crime. And I want to implore them not to support the vicious terrorists who carry out these killings. I want to tell them not to give them any succor, not to give them any comfort. And I want to implore them to see themselves as the next victim. You know, they say that people are afraid to talk what they know. I'm saying to them, be afraid to die with what you know. Be afraid of death, because it could be you next time and your child next time. It takes courage to change a society. It takes courage and boldness to confront evil in this society. And I know the women can do it. And I know you know who is doing it. In communities like this, everyone knows. Everyone knows. Let this be one time when people speak up. I agree that the penalty for those who hurt children and kill children should be so grave that it's beyond somebody's contemplation. I agree with that. But what I want is that the condemnation of the act is so strong that it is never contemplated. And I do believe that we can. Jamaica, we can do it if we come together. If we unite in this fight against crime, we can do it. And the signal which has been sent by this bomb hoax is a signal to us across all Hillel, AISK, Lennon High, Denby High, Ascot, Portmore. It touches on all social classes. And sometimes there's a kind of divine way in which messages have to be brought to us. And I found that this bomb hoax coming right after this slaughter was perhaps the way to say to the entire country, you're not immune from these things, you know. Your children are not protected. It's either one way or another way. So you all need to come together to do something. And as I urge the police to quickly apprehend those terrorists who have committed this act, I say to the people of Salt Spring, this is a tough one. This is a really tough one. It's not a family, it's an entire community. I say to the people of Chetwood Memorial Primary School, my heart goes out to you. You all have to help each other to be strong. You have to see this through together. And I say to the country, we need to work together to stop this. We need to stop the mourning. No more expansion of the wall of mourning for children. No more National Day of Mourning for children. The test of a society, they say, is how we treat our children. Let us show the world that Jamaica can step up to being a first-class nation in how it protects its children. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you all who have contributed to the motion on the adjournment, and I know that you speak for all of us in the chamber. But as President of the Senate, I join in offering my deepest condolences to the family, particularly the mothers of the two young boys who were so brutally murdered. Minister Hill.
Mr. President, the leader expressed her sadness, deep sadness at the murder of these two children and the hoax that's going on in our school. I add mine to the comments that were made on both sides of the Senate this afternoon. And because there's no other business that we plan to do today, Mr. President, I'm asked for the adjournment of the Senate for a day to be decided.
Thank you very much, Minister Hill. The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against? This Honorable Senate now adjourns for a date to be fixed. Marshal.
Traveling to Jamaica? Submit your customs and immigration declaration online for faster processing. Visit the enterjamaica.com portal, complete and submit your declaration prior to departure. Upon arrival, proceed to the immigration kiosk and swipe your passport to confirm your trip details and declaration. Once done, proceed to the customs hall to retrieve your luggage and final clearance. The online C5, making air travel easier. You may contact us or the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency for more information.
It's Friday, November 10. In the headlines in local news, Jamaica records 3,147 suspected